live now, right? All right, that was quite the new open there. Kind of like that. All right, welcome everyone to the December 2nd, 2014 Shakopee City Council meeting. Ms. Weckman, could you please call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Lehman.
Here.
Councilmember Mokel.
Here.
Councilmember Luce.
Here.
Councilmember Whiting.
Here.
Mayor Tabke.
Here, all stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, item number 3, recognition of photo contest winners. Kristen, did you want to introduce this at all? You'll do that? Okay.
Council, Mayor, this year we held our second annual Show Off Shakopee photo contest. We had approximately 50 entries into the contest. Our theme was the 4 seasons, and tonight we're here to recognize our winners to the contest. So, our 4 winners, one of our winners could not be here today, but the other 3 are going to be here. So. Our summer contest winner was Anita Bodemer. And her photo was called Wherever We Go Together. Anita, if you want to come up.
Nobody's taking a photo?
Let me stay up here. Our winter contest winner was Robert Waldridge. And his photo is called Which Way South. Our spring contest winner could not be here today. Her name is Karen Anderson. And her photo is Spring. Our grand prize winner, which was also our fall seasonal winner, with this photo called Fall Colors with Glider O'Dowd Lake, is Ghana.
That's beautiful.
So each of our 3 seasonal winners won a check prize of $50, and our grand prize winner won $75. So our contest next year, the theme is going to be the city in action. So we encourage residents to start taking photos this year already for the contest next fall of city parks, city facilities, city employees, people representing the Shakopee. So I'm going to go ahead and get a photo. I would like you guys to each hold your photo.
Oh, all right. Yeah.
That's actually great, Dave.
It's going to be the scandal of the year that the mayor contest.
Thank you very much. And these will be on display here. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. All right, item number 4, approval of the agenda. We need to add a closed session to the agenda this evening, correct? Is there anything that we need to do special for that?
Mr. Mayor, if you're going to add it, you should add it now.
Okay. Councilor Lehman?
Had a closed session under other business, I suppose, to discuss or evaluate the city administrator performance.
Anything else?
Mr.
Mr.
Mayor,
McNeil?
This is an item that can either be consent or for discussion, but that is to accept the resignation of the Finance Director, City Clerk Julie Linehan. And if on consent, that could be 5D4.
Okay. Everyone okay with that? All right, entertain a motion to accept the agenda as amended. Anyone? Councilor Whiting,
Make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
have a second?
Second.
Councilor Lehman, any discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. Item 5, consent business. Anything to remove or add to consent? Anyone? Councilor Whiting?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is that the first time in a while, huh? All right, second, Councilor Mokel? Mr. McNeil, could you please read the consent business?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 5C1, authorized purchase of 3 international cab and chassis from Boyer International, including trade and accessory equipment from Towmaster Truck Equipment for a combined price of $540,048.39. 5C2, authorizes the purchase of 2 pickup trucks for Parks Maintenance and the Facilities Maintenance Divisions from Midway Ford Commercial in the amount of $51,172. 5C3 authorizes the purchase of 1 new pickup truck for the Natural Resources Division from Midway Ford Commercial in the amount of $22,140. 5C4 authorizes the purchase of 2 pickup trucks for the Engineering Division from Midway Ford Commercial in the amount of $74,990. And 5C5 authorizes the purchase of 1 new Ford F-150 pickup truck for the Police Department from Midway Ford Commercial in the amount of $27,870. And finally, authorizes, 5C6 authorizes the purchase of 3 SUV police interceptors and 1 Ford administrative vehicle from Nelson Auto Center in the amount of $103,122.75. The purchases for the items listed 5C1 through 5C6, funding will come from the Capital Equipment Internal Service Fund. 5D1 adopts resolution number 7519, adopting the 2015 pay plan for certain non-union employees of the city of Shakopee. 5D2 adopts resolution 7520, which adopts the 2015 pay plan for part-time, temporary, and seasonal employees of the city. 5C3 adopts resolution 7501, amending the personnel handbook for the employees of the city of Shakopee. 5F1 approves the payment of bills and electronic transfers in the amount of $1,215,193.08. 5D4 was added, and that accepts with regret the resignation of Finance Director, City Clerk Julie Linehan. 5F2 accepts with regret the resignation of Eric Krieger from the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, and adopts resolution number 7524, appointing John Otto to the Parks and Rec Advisory Board to fill the unexpired vacancy. And finally, 5F3 adopts resolution 7523, amending the boards and commissions guidelines for appointments and operations.
Thank you, sir. Any discussion on those items? Seeing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. All right, moving on to recognition of involved citizens. Item number 6. Is there anyone who has an item they'd like to discuss in front of council tonight that is not on our agenda this evening? You have up to 5 minutes to talk about it if you'd like. All right, seeing none, we're going to move on to 7A, public meeting addressing the 2015 budget, property tax levy, debt service cancellation specific to certain debt issues, resolutions number 7516, 17, and 18.
And we're gonna go through all this paper.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, public that is present, and viewing public. This is an annual presentation that is provided to provide the overview of the budget process, the property tax levies, the debt, just the general, how do we fund the city operations. This has been a really interesting budget year. Now, you recall we started this way back last summer, prepared for a preliminary levy, discussed options as to personnel and projects that would be undertaken. It has been one of the most unique years following many years of market decline, issues in which people were dealing with flat incomes, loss of jobs. The 2015 budget has been one of those stellar years that you really enjoy working for a city and preparing a budget. I'd like to go an overview of some of the items we walked through as we prepared this year's budget. I can tell you in summary where we started at the initial point of this budget, where we were talking a potential of a levy that would increase 10%, has been able to be scaled back significantly because, as I said, you're in a growth mode. You are in an environment in which there were times historically when the city did not receive revenues that they anticipated. There were times when expenditures due to changes in markets and products was quite high. The exact inverse is happening this year, and we're able to translate that down, and as you'll see, the budget levy is significantly reduced. There's several items that took place, if I can draw your attention to the screen. The 2014 legislative session is always where we start. The wonderful thing about this one is there was no special session. That meant we were able to move forward very early into the process and implement the changes that were made. The one factor that we always consider here is personnel costs are a big part of the city. We do service. We provide services to the community and to the businesses. Personnel costs have to be a factor when we talk about how do we plan for the budget. PER rates are a rate that is funding the pensions of the benefit-eligible employees. When those are adjusted by the legislature, the city has to comply with that. It isn't an option. These are items that have been required by the legislature. We apply those rate increases, and that was in this year's budget. Minimum wage changes have had some change on only just a small portion of our budget because there are very few positions right now that would be held back at that level. There were data practices policy enhancements that were provided this year that several of us in administration, IT, finance, clerks have been looking at actions that we are going to have to undertake and expand in the upcoming years. Sales tax, which was a big issue in the 2014 budget, was actually expanded and exempted even more areas of the city than had been done the year before. The process always begins about June, July. We sit down with the departments, we start talking about what are your projects, what are your staffing needs for these projects, what are the council's visions for things they want to accomplish. We then roll that into a preliminary levy in September, route that to the county, and at that point, they start developing what are called the proposed property tax statements. Now, just a moment here. I'm going to flip back and forth if I can get the right buttons. What I have here, benefit of a wonderful city employee, thank you, is, let me make this a little smaller, this is the item that residents within the community received recently called your proposed property taxes 2015. Now on here, there are areas I can draw your attention to. The most significant changes you're going to see, as we had talked about early on, is there's an estimated market value that's at the top of these tax statements. The growth in Shakopee's residential property taxes this year was roughly 13%. 90-some% of the city residents saw an increase in their property. Translation, a market value increase alone will typically bring about a property tax increase. That is very clear when you take a look at these proposed statements that in almost every case, the amount that is shown on a property tax estimate increased. That is what I call the double-edged sword. It's great to have property value increases, but it's the whole concept of even without a levy increase, you would still possibly see a property tax increase on the end product of the property tax. Okay, let's switch back here. Okay, good. So the preliminary levy was set. Budget has been refined with the city staff October, November, in fact, right down to today because I was still getting details from Scott County. And a public meeting, which is being held tonight, discusses the tax levy, the final levy that would be submitted to Scott County, and will be the factor that will be established when the 2015 property tax statements are generated. One of the factors in this year's budget planning has been revenues. Again, as I stated, There's been years when the city has simply not collected the revenues that were anticipated. As we were looking through this year's budget, we had the benefit of having a revenue source and multiple revenue sources that provided revenues that hadn't been placed in the original 2014 budget and items that hadn't really been considered when planning the 2015 budget. One area that Scott County is very fortunate is property tax collections in this county are very high. Delinquent taxes are very low. When we plan for a property tax levy, the city typically allows for a certain percentage of uncollected taxes. The amount of taxes collected, we just received the second half settlement today, is actually higher than what was budgeted for 2014. That in turn translates to an addition in fund balance. There's been increases in state aid. Mr. Loney has seen dollars come through municipal state aid. There's been projects that you've worked with private developers that we've received funding from them that is unbudgeted. We have increases in charges for services in both the police department, engineering, inspections, and the tribal fees and contributions, which up until a couple of years ago did not exist. The expenditures that you're going to be reviewing are fairly consistent with the prior years. There are new budget requests for personnel that have been added, and the addition of the personnel are to reflect the programs that are being added, the new council initiatives, the community expectations. Ms. Wilson will be able to discuss those in detail if you have additional questions later. One major benefit this year that again is rarely seen in a city, we have no insurance increases. The staff costs reflect a zero increase from 2014 to 2015 insurance. That allowed us to take that preliminary budget once we received the 2015 rates and initially work through a decrease. The budget does allow for a 3% wage increase, and the police and fire para amounts have also been brought into this budget. Let me see if I can bring this up a little. Bear with me. Okay. The staffing requests that we will discuss tonight are an assistant chief operations training for fire, an IT staff restructuring that has been discussed previously with council. There are seasonal park maintenance employees. If there are questions, Mr. Loney is available here. Victim and community service coordinator in police, and a finance clerk position that will work in both the areas of finance clerk, records, retention, retrieval, and a change in a position that is currently a management intern in admin to a full-time management assistant. The transfers have been an interesting topic over the years too. When we started the discussion of budgets 3 years ago, we had if I can draw your attention to the transfers out, there was virtually no annual planned funding for the Capital Improvement Fund. Your 2015 budget reflects a culmination of a long process where we started from no budget transfer to the Capital Improvement Fund to a budget transfer of $1 million. This has been a significant improvement in allowing the engineering staff, the public works staff, the planning staff, every area of the city to prepare and plan for what they know as committed projects that are included in the capital improvement plan and have the funding that can be relied upon to do the work. There's also funding to the EDA because we are working with a position that was filled just the past couple of years. There are loan programs, there are operations, there's professional service costs that they work on when they bring projects to you. And those are items that fulfill the goals that the council identified early on. Expand and improve the capital assets, bring forward improvements to the economic development, and work for a consistent funding source for those types of projects. When we look, didn't mean to go that fast. When we look at the actual budget as we broke this out by taxes and all the various revenue sources, the expenditures by the general divisions of the city allow for the transfers in and transfers out. There's approximately a $500,000 shortfall. That is a funding mechanism that can be filled this year by the unspent of what would either be greater than anticipated revenue collections or less than anticipated expenditures. That 500,000 will easily be covered by the time we wrap up the 2014 real numbers. Just to kind of go through a few of the factors that we look at each year that I think represent a lot of what makes cities unique from a private business. The majority of your revenues that a city deals with are right there in taxes. It's a huge category. The next largest resource of revenue is charges for services. Now, one area that is included in this charges for services are the dollars that the city receives from the Shakopee Public Utilities. There are dollars that come in each year as they bring forward through the agreements that were made many decades ago that are provided to the city for their share per the agreements. Other levels of revenue assessments, licenses and permits, intergovernmental and miscellaneous are quite small, but easily 60 to 70% of the revenue in most cities reflect on a property tax. As I talked about when I had detailed to the council how we do this budget, the one benefit that is extremely favorable for Shakopee is you have a really broad base of revenues from property taxes. You're not a single industry town. You are not a community that is a bedroom community. You are an area that has a vast and diverse commercial, industrial, residential base. That is an area that leaves you with a lot less risk than communities that are in kind of buttonholed into having a very limited base of resources. Moving on to your general fund expenditures, as we talk about each year, if I can bring it back 6 months ago when we did the audit, annually what you will see is your public safety is a significant portion. This includes your police, your fire, inspections. Those are areas that have significant personnel costs, and it's also an area that can have the most difficult to budget and often shows a lot of unanticipated expenditures that you just simply can't plan for. It depends on the number of investigations, the type of crimes, personnel situations that may come up because these are difficult physical jobs. There's a lot of factors that come into determining a accurate budget. Each year we have been refining this and the numbers have been very close actual to budget. This year you will also see a very similar thing. The next area where you see expenditures is your culture and recreation. As we've talked about over the years, you've had a lot of growth in your parks. You've had a lot of expansion of your opportunities for your outdoor and cultural benefits to the community. They're reflected in this. When we talk about the actual levy itself, your 2014 levy for the general fund was $15,793,220. When we walked through and revised the numbers, whether it was for changing the expenditures downward in a number of places, walking through the types of revenues that we could accurately rely on for 2015, we determined that we could actually bring this levy, which started out close to 17 million, we actually brought it down to 16,300,000. With that levy, I can assure you that the amount you have to reach the budgeted parameters you have is sufficient. The next piece that I think as a council you can be very proud of that you've taken a fiscal responsibility is debt service. As I get on my pulpit up here every year and talk to you about debt service, it is really critical when the city issues debt that you assure the bond buyers it's going to be paid. Every year they are paid. It's never been a problem. What we have been working toward, and you'll see this year, is a budget that'll have actually 3 separate debt levies, that these levies are actually identified out in your discussion and placed on the property tax statements. This year has been the first year that we've actually done that, where you are now in 2016, which will be next year's budget, there will be even less because certain levies will fall off in 17. It is a very, very healthy debt service environment you're in right now. When we look at the tax levy dollars, this is probably the best way to explain it. We have a general levy that we're looking at slightly over 3%. You have a tax capacity levy, which this is what funds your debt service and your general fund levy, and that will increase about 3.71%. There is also a fire referendum levy, I believe, if I'm going to go back in your memory banks. Back in the days, a referendum was held for a specific type of a construction of a fire facility. The city was allowed and voted upon by the public to levy for specifically that bond payment, and that's what this $200,000 is. That has again been similar to your CIP levy. This has been incrementally ramped up. You're almost to the point now where the full amount of 240-some thousand per year is almost covered. That'll be next year's project. When we look at tax capacity rates, and Mr. McNeil routed something to me today that I honestly got a real chuckle out of because I haven't heard anybody actually say this. Tax capacity rates are used very, randomly. A lot of people don't have a clue what they are. And what they are is they provide a number. It's really all they apply is a number. I want to show you something that was very interesting to read today. What about property tax rate? This is a group of individuals who send out information to taxpayers. And my favorite line is here. Our advice is simple, ignore them. And I'm like, well, that's probably the bluntest thing I've ever heard. Tax rates are often used at a point where they provide supposedly a comparison. Where they get kind of wonky is when you have years like this, where you have growth, or years where you have incredible decline, or years where you have had a whole new levy. That's what makes tax rates difficult to use comparably. It is an interesting year because everybody's tax rates are going down. It's a very interesting year because could I tell you exactly by looking at a tax rate what that means? To some degree, yes. In the case of an environment we're in now with market value growing, it simply means you have a broader base to spread your levies to. Tax trend rates, again, you'll see this every time we do the audit, very healthy. There are communities that have very large spikes or decline, not happening in a growth mode. When you are reviewing the action tonight, what we have placed before you is 3 separate resolutions. Those 3 resolutions include the approval, hang on here, the approval of the 2015 general fund budget. It is the debt service levy cancellation, and that is for every piece of debt and every issue that you have that you simply have to define to the county. If you have a debt service amount due and you do not levy for it, you must formally cancel it. The final action is what you'll see is the general fund and other levies. Those are in your packet. If you'd like, I can definitely, let me put this up here. Just kind of go through an overview with you. Resolution 7516 adopts the general fund by specific categories, a budget of $23,012,427. The next item you'd be asked to approve is setting the 2014 property tax levies. Again, that includes the general levy, the debt service 04B, 06A, 07B, which comes to a total of, my glasses on, $17,253,267 total levy. The final action is the cancellation of the debt service. You have 9 outstanding debt service levies. And as I stated, any levy that doesn't have a specific, any bond issue that doesn't have a specific levy is required to place that information and get your cancellation. Are there any questions at this point? I've provided a lot of data, and I hope in a comprehensive and understandable format. I know there are questions and concerns about certain areas. I'd be glad to take any questions.
Let's start with specific things first, and then we'll get into general discussions about budget and that kind of stuff after we hear from the public. So, Councilor Whiting.
Just want to point out again, and I think I do this every year, about when you talk about debt cancellation or debt service cancellation, that's not that we don't pay that, it's
No.
just that we don't levy for that out of the
Correct.
general budget.
Correct.
One point. And I also wanted to point out, at last night's SPUC meeting, they discussed an increase in the payment to the city of $97,000. And you talked about revenues that are coming in, that you're still kind of capturing revenues that we haven't really wrapped our head around. So that's something I want to mention, that there's more money coming in from SPUC that I don't think has been allocated in some of these
Correct.
numbers. So overall, we started at 10%.
We had initially discussed 10%. When it came time for the preliminary levy, that was sheared back because I was already getting indicators from the county of what our property tax collections were, and they were running 9% ahead of schedule.
They were at 3.8.
Yes, it's just slightly under 4. And again, in an environment in which you as a council are working in, you have to coordinate with other entities. You're aware of what the school is looking at. You're aware of what community residents are looking and anticipating. You're very much aware of the growth in the city. You're in a very good position to capitalize on what is a positive trend right now within your community.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to point out those couple things.
Thank you. Other folks? Any specific issues that we need to discuss within here? I have one thing that as we were going through the preliminary budget portion, we just said we would keep it in the preliminary and discuss it once we got to final budget, and that is the fire training position. Does anybody want to discuss that further, or are you comfortable with it, or where is everyone at? Councilor Whiting.
Mr. Mayor, I think if there was things that we talked about to chip this down even farther, from 3.8% to, our overall budget numbers, I think that would be the first one that I would put out there.
Okay.
I agree.
Councilor Lehman.
Yep.
Does someone want to? I'm assuming it's not you.
No,
Chris, you want to talk about that?
Ms. Wilson is here to answer those.
Ms. Wilson, let everybody know what that position is and why it's important and why everyone from staff thinks we need to have it.
Certainly, I'll do my best, and Chief Coleman is
Chief
in
is
the
here, too.
audience, I believe, as well, if you have questions that I can't answer. The request was brought forward for a full-time assistant chief in the fire department. As a refresher, our fire department currently has 7 full-time employees: the chief, the fire marshal, an administrative assistant, and 4 full-time firefighters that serve as essentially a duty crew during daytime hours, Monday through Friday. So this would be an 8th full-time position in the department. The department currently training would be a major focus of the assistant chief position, but not the entirety of the position. The department currently trains, or drills as they sometimes call it, approximately 3 Monday evenings a month, so almost every Monday. They have a few where they do meetings instead of training. And that training is all set up and planned, and the curriculum set out, or speakers arranged if we're doing an exterior speaker or something like that, by a part-time training chief that we currently pay $6,200 a year to. So it's a very minimal salary for the amount of work that needs to be done. It significantly limits when we can do training, because that person that holds that training chief job generally has another full-time job that they're carrying out during the work week. Therefore, we offer training only on Monday evenings for the most part. Occasionally, there'll be a Saturday something or other, but mostly only on Monday evenings. We don't have the ability to offer makeups of training or another time for a firefighter that may work evenings or something like that. If you can't make that Monday evening training on a regular basis, you're excluded from serving on the fire department. So, reporting requirements, record-keeping requirements are only going up in terms of what has to be documented in terms of our training, who attended it, how regularly it was carried out, and that type of thing. So all of those demands have just become too much for the very, very part-time position that we have as a training chief right now. So the city has made significant investments in the fire department in recent years. And the chief and I believe this is the next step towards that professional fire department that serves a growing city such as ours. The part-time chief training process has worked for us in the past, but it's not working as well as it could moving forward and where we're at currently. I think the other downside to continuing the position as it exists currently is that we get a lot of turnover. It's a lot of hours a week to put in for somebody that has another full-time job on top of this. So generally our training chiefs serve 2, maybe 3 years before they say, you know, they just can't keep up that pace anymore. And then we go back to, you know, recruiting somebody and bringing them up to speed and having them learn the ropes and kind of learn what works and what doesn't work to hopefully get a couple of years out of them, and then we repeat the process again. The thought with a full-time assistant chief, like I said, is that they would focus heavily on training of the fire department, but also provide someone to serve as an acting chief in the absence of Chief Coleman if he were on vacation or out of town at training or something like that. It provides a next in command similar to what we have with the 2 captains in the police department. I lost my train of thought. Oh, and lastly, I would say the vision is that this training chief will take on responsibility for our OSHA training and utilize their training skills and knowledge to provide OSHA mandated safety training in departments across the city. So there would be a benefit in that regards. The cost of the position would be offset very minorly by the fairly small salary that we pay the current part-time chief. And with time, it's our hope that we could scale back our use of a contract with the Minnesota Municipal Utilities Association, which is how we currently meet our OSHA safety training needs here at the city. So that would be my outline of the position. I can't see Chief Coleman, but I think he's back there if he has anything to add. Or if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Chief, do you have anything you'd like to add to that? I know how much you love the microphone. You can shake your head no or yes. You don't.
Mayor, members of council, thanks for having me tonight. It's an important position. As we looked at the strategic plan back in 2012, 2013, we looked out to 2020, where we're going to build the 3rd fire station. And this is the progression that we need to get the training chief and then start hiring more paid-on-call firefighters and build our staff up to get to that position. So this is all part of that process. So that's all I really have to add to that. And if you have further questions for me, I'm here.
Questions?
When you're out of town, your assistant chiefs take over at this point in time, correct?
That is correct.
And the training chief at this time is one of the paid-on-call, or the full-time firefighters, correct?
The assistant chief?
No, the acting training chief?
The acting training chief, yes.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure everybody knew that.
And why can't that continue in a good way? I mean,
Having those added responsibilities in the duty crew would necessitate a higher salary to compensate, and under our pay equity structure, we can't require that level of work of somebody that's got the same title and making the same money as a rank and file firefighter.
okay. Guys, Whiting.
Have we looked into that cost and that differential of the
Of going to 3 firefighters and one
that's doing the duties of the training chief, and what that cost differential in pay might be?
No, we have not costed that out.
Other questions? Guys, Whiting.
Came up with another one, I'm sorry. Thank you. What is do you know the current cost of the OSHA contractors that you mentioned, the municipal firm?
If you allow me to answer off the top of my head,
I'll give
I
you some
want to say
leeway.
$26,000 a year. And that provides us with someone who is on site 2 days per month. And then they're in other cities the other days of the month.
Guys, Luce?
I was just kind of on that same realm as to if we add the 3 things together, the full-time, the training, and the OSHA, where do we come up dollar-wise?
I can certainly provide you that information. I apologize, I don't have it offhand, the notion of converting one of the existing duty crew members to the assistant chief. I don't have that at my fingertips.
Councilor Lehman.
Then you'd still be where you're at right now, because you'd have to move one out of a duty crew, make him a training chief, and replace the duty crew person, so you'd be back to what the request is.
We wouldn't have to add the 4. We could just go back down to 3.
Well, they say they need 4 to run a truck, so.
Okay. Your explanation about having it in place for growing for future fire station makes the most sense of anything that I've. You didn't say that last time we talked about this.
He did, but where that location was gonna be is in question.
Yeah.
Correct.
Exactly. So I mean,
We don't know exactly where that's gonna be. We've built the park over there now, and we're moving the station around, but
okay. What would the ramifications be if we held off for 1 year on this?
that's there's no real ramifications other than we're set back a year.
Okay.
You know, whatever the council wants to do, that's, well, I'm here to serve the council and do what they would like me to do.
Councilor Luce?
I would be in favor of the 1 year, but I would also be in favor, after seeing what is being done in training nights, a little bump in that salary. Go from, I don't know, add a couple $1,000s to it. It is a lot of work. He does a great job, but I think we're moving a little quick on the second chief.
That's my major concern with this one is that we grew a ton in the fire department last year and then another full-time next year, and then that's my main concern with it.
And I certainly understand that, but it's just we've been not growing for many, many years, and it's time to get to where we need to be. With the increase in the salary, I think that's a great idea. I would look more at, maybe we should be starting to pay him hourly. So if he works 30 hours that week, we're paying him 30 hours to work that week. If he's working 20 hours that week, we're paying him 20 hours a week, instead of paying him a flat salary.
Councilor Lehman?
Instead of trying to do payroll and jockey positions here, I think that's a good opportunity for you as a department head and Chris to get together and kind of work some of this stuff out and come up with different scenarios and then present them and see if we can figure out how to move forward, not necessarily exactly with what's in front of us, but some kind of a morphodite of something different.
Okay. Councilor Luce?
I would have to believe that, you know, being full-time duty crew and being the training chief, there's some intermix in time during the day that he's probably on the clock for duty crew, but possibly doing some training stuff that needs to be done and can only be done during the day.
Or the paperwork, at least.
Well, paperwork, contacting people to come in and do other training. You know, there's a benefit there. He's also available for the truck when it needs to go out. But I still believe a bump in pay and go from there. And next year maybe look at second chief.
Okay. Can we have that in the form of a motion, just so that we can, Mr. Thompson?
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Council, my suggestion would be is take the public testimony, then put the motion on the floor eventually.
Okay.
And then amend it to delete that position. That way because there could be other motions too.
Okay.
So let's
Perfect.
get the
Thank
main
you.
motion.
Any other specific items that we need to discuss before we get to public testimony? Councilor Whiting?
I would like to bring up for discussion the IT department and whether or not we need to go full on in that department too. Anybody else?
Okay.
Hear that?
Councilor Lehman?
I think we started out with a request for a couple and then it turned into 5. And I don't know where we're at now.
Yeah,
So
me too.
what is being proposed in this budget? And I guess I'll stop right there. What is being proposed?
The city currently has 2 full-time IT staff people to support all 7 of our city departments and about 155 user accounts. You're correct. Originally, the request was for an incremental step of adding 1 position, so taking us from 2 to 3. As the budget process went along, we proposed a bolder plan to the city council that would take us from 2 to 5 staff positions. The number that Ms. Linehan had on the screen when she showed you proposed added personnel costs will cover, I believe, is that all of, I can't,
All 5.
That would be the newly added position.
so it would be all the 3 new additions from
Right.
the 2. The
Because
city,
2 are in the operation.
Ms.
Yep.
Lane, you need to talk into the microphone.
the 2 are already in the operating budget for the administration department, so Ms. Linehan has showed the proposed 3 additions as adds to that. You may recall that the city council commissioned a strategic plan for our IT operations earlier this fall that is well underway, and I have a very early draft of it in my inbox for review. Currently, I would expect the council will see that in January. Early results are it's certainly showing an urgent need to take us to at least 4, with plenty of work for a 5th person to do as well. What I'd ask the council to consider is leaving the funding that's in the budget there. We will be back with job descriptions and more detailed plans before any of that money is spent on any positions. It's also, I believe, staggered. It's not intended to fund, everybody starting January 1, because that's just not realistically going to happen with where we're at in other hiring that needs to be done throughout the city. But we're increasingly dependent upon those IT services, and similar to what Chief Coleman noted about the fire department, we've kept them incredibly small and incredibly lean for a very long period of time, and now we're facing a need to take a bolder approach.
Questions? Comments, thoughts? Councilor Mokel.
I would like to just see leaving the funding and then seeing where we fall after January when we get that report back.
I'm sorry, could you clarify, leaving the funding as
I'd like to
in the
see,
budget?
yep, as
Okay.
budgeted.
Councilor Whiting.
I can see the value in that, because we don't know what the study shows us. But right now, not knowing that, going full on 5 staff members, I can't swallow that at this point, so. But should we budget, or since we did manage to do some good things with the numbers here, I think we could probably live with that.
Okay, Councilor Luce.
Being that we're not going to just all on 3 right away, I have no problem with it. Keep the money in the budget so that if it's needed, we can do it, ramp up slowly and sensibly. From some of the seminars I've been in, we are woefully behind. Security approach and all of the data privacy that we are needing to do probably take one person by themselves. So.
Councilor Lehman.
I would, I heard we have a need for 4, so, and not long until 5. I would like to see 4 and then a 5th one in the following budget.
All right, we'll talk more about that once we get the amendments on. All right, now we're going to move to the public testimony portion of the evening. And so anyone who would like to discuss the budget as it is presented today with everyone, we would love to have discussion. You are limited to 5 minutes as we go forward. So anyone like to speak? Yes, please. And I have to sign in and state your name and address, please.
Beverly Cannon, 2036 Canterbury Road. I have 2 questions.
Put any of your documents up
Okay.
here, this camera is on.
Okay. Here, I think that'll be nice for you to see.
Hey, Julie, can you zoom out a little bit?
Excuse me a minute. Onto this. Would that be covering enough of what
Yep.
you've got there?
Okay. Okay, what it says is that I paid in 2014, this past year, I paid Scott County $2,012.80 in real estate tax. I paid Shakopee $2,099.18. That is $86.38 more than the county. So that's my first question. How can it cost more to run Shakopee than the entire county? And now in the proposed tax that I have in front of me, Scott County is asking for $2,078.65, and Shakopee is asking for $2,247.77. You've upped it now, you need $169.12 more than the county. Why?
We'll give you the short answer on that one. But the 2015 numbers you have on there are for the city are significantly higher than what they will be actually, because the preliminary budget was set at a 10% levy increase, and will, if it is adopted as proposed tonight, it's only going to be a 3.8% increase. So that number will come down quite a bit on there. But the Scott County and Shakopee are very difficult to compare, the two of them. It is pretty much impossible to compare the two as apples to apples, because Scott County takes in taxes from a significantly larger number of parcels and people, and from a lot of different funds that we don't get
Just
access
let me
to.
say that in the past, it has been dramatically different. This county took more, and Shakopee was rather insignificant in comparison.
Ms. Kanan, a lot of it has to do with formulas from the state. The mayor is correct. Certainly, both the city and county provide governmental services, but we provide significantly different variety of governmental services. They do assessing, they do social services, they do libraries, those sorts of things. We provide fire, which the county does not do. We certainly provide more in terms of policing, and we have a more extensive park system. So I understand the concerns as far as comparing one to another, but they really are an apple and an orange.
Okay, well, I have one suggestion, observation I've made, or learned, that Shakopee is nearly built out. So if you start feeding yourself a healthy, fat budget now, over time, you'll find yourself in the position that other cities are running into. Even some major ones, like in Chicago area, are going bankrupt. So I would caution you to just because there's money now, this is something you learn when your household budget, I would hope, you try and save it for the day when the income is less.
Thank you.
And one thing that I can tell you is going to backfire a little bit is that the townhouse addition that was allowed to go in the what was supposed to be industrial, commercial, out by Dean Lake, that's going to hurt you in the long run, because those are all takers of the money. We as people need more money than anything else, any other entity. And so I'm begging you to use caution here. I know you're thrilled with what the, I'm sorry, I forgot her, didn't catch her name, is presented, that we're just flowing with money, but it's temporary and going to backfire soon.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak?
Hey guys.
Hello.
First time I've ever been here, so I didn't dress.
Thanks for joining us. Sign in up there and then state your name and address, please, when you're ready.
Alrighty. Christopher Taylor, 532 Spencer Street South, so about 6 blocks up. I guess I'm just wondering if my percentage that's going up, property taxes that are going up, are comparable to other people in the community. And I basically want to kind of like maybe an average. Is this average? Is this kind of escalated, or?
Do you have it there?
I sure do.
Are you comfortable putting it up there?
Yeah, why
Go
not?
for it.
I'm an open book. guess this will work. We need to focus.
Yeah, it'll
on it.
auto zoom for
Oh,
us,
nice.
autofocus there.
I mean, I guess the main issue is this 18%, and I mean, that's a pretty large number. I mean, that's what first, shocked me. Now, I have paid actually, through the years, I've actually been paying less. I mean, it's actually went down, so sometimes that's a good thing, but then if you're looking to sell your house, maybe not. So, I guess for me, maybe wanting to sell here in a couple of years, I mean, it's a good thing that it goes up, but I mean, is this 18% comparable to most people's property taxes when it comes to, I guess the price that stuff has went up overall?
Mr. McNeil?
I mean, I don't know if that's worded right, but.
Mr. Taylor, I think probably the major item that you have there is looking at your valuation. As I can read it, went from 158.4 to 194.5.
Yes, yeah.
Which I think is a significant increase just in terms of what your market value has been. Other homes may not have gone up that much, and therefore the 18+% that you have may not be seen by everyone. Everyone is unique, and a lot of it is dependent upon valuation. The expenditures of services that you get should be the same from house to house in a lot of things.
Okay.
Did you do any improvements?
Yeah, actually, it's kind of like it's on the main stop sign, so you got to represent the block. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that.
I guess I spruced it up since I've been there. So,
right.
But I've actually lived in the house for about 13 years and purchased it from my, my landlord.
Yeah, when you do improvements to the house, that increases your property value, which
Right.
therefore increases the property tax that's paid. So we appreciate you doing improvements to your house and continuing to make it look good.
Right, and I
but-
guess I can thank you for the fence that you put up a couple years ago for me, so I appreciate that.
Well, it's a give and take good
Yeah,
relationship.
it was on your land, and there was safety concerns with kids, and so it benefited both me and the community. So, I guess other than that, thank you for your time.
Thank you for being here. We appreciate it.
Do mine so I can get back up there, Mayor.
I don't know. Well,
State your name.
Want your autograph?
Matt Lehman, 815 East 8th Avenue, Shakopee, also 936 First Avenue East, which is my business. I pay taxes twice. You're welcome. And let's see if I can figure out how to operate this stuff. This is this year's. How do we zoom it in?
Right on that keypad.
What do I push? This here?
Doing it.
You do it.
Cool. Look at that. The number that got my attention was 22.1%. So no, you're not the highest. So far, we'll see if I get a prize at the end of the day. 22% with no improvements. Actually had to put a fence up to keep the neighbors' dogs off the grandkids out back. So that was actually not an improvement that I would prefer to make, but one I made from safety standpoints. What really caught my attention is, we'll look at that number. The city portion, 441, and the value, taxable value, 111. Okay? 111, 450, roughly. This is 2010. Value is 153. City portion, 450. Okay? So, what we basically have is a property paying the same at 50,000 less than they did when it was valued 50,000 more. I attribute that to city tax rate. Actually, I have it going back to 2000. And which happens to be my tenure on council. So if we take 2000 and we go down to 2010, city tax rate, 01 went from a mill rate. So it was a different program at the time. They swapped over to the tax rate in 2002. The 16 number is known as a mill rate. It's what used to be used prior to the calculation it is today. So we're pretty consistent in the 30, 33, 29, 30, 32, which really kept taxes pretty consistent. And my philosophy of what causes tax rate changes is the spending. The spending based on, you can call it tax capacity, I call it new growth, new revenue, okay? This one here is the actual households, 2000 to 2006, the boom years, okay? So we were putting out some serious amount of housing, detached, attached. It was gangbusters. Michael Leake is here. He can verify with 1,200 houses a year was not uncommon. And them new houses were new dollars coming in as new forms of tax revenue, which helped offset, you know, the new employees and new trucks and so on, new expenses to, you know, serve the new residents. So imagine the feeling I got when I looked at a 22% increase without a school referendum yet of potentially 80, 100 million. And then possibly $35 million on a referendum or not on a referendum for community enhancements. I would imagine putting them two together on this number would have done something more than what this number did to me. So I think planning forward, today, last year I think we had 66 households built in Shakopee. So we don't have the new revenue stream that we used to have in the past. We have a lot of commercial construction. Some of that is tax abated or their taxes are received and returned back to them as a rebate. So it's not new dollars that we can spend on things. Yeah, we get the market value in the equation of what the whole city is worth, but we don't get the physical dollars to actually go spend on something. There's other benefits, Mayor, you know, you get the jobs and these types of things, but bottom line is you don't get the dollars like you do when you have a lot of something coming here paying new revenue. I am concerned that the last year we hired 14, and now we're talking about a couple more positions. 14 positions without a lot of new revenue to pay for that, which is what causes your tax rate to go up. Because you're basically, what you're doing is you're taking more from each
Hey, Matt,
in a higher amount.
are you up there as Counselor Lehman, or are you up there as Matt Lehman resident?
I'm here as a taxpayer twice.
Okay, then your 5 minutes are up.
Thank you, sir.
You can finish what you were saying, but just
Well,
conclude,
basically,
please.
My theory is, when you see a tax rate go up, you're basically taking a larger percentage from each. You know, if you could use it as a percentage, which it's not comparable, but let's say you had a 30% you're taking from let's say you had 5 properties all valued the exact same.
Did you miss the
In
conclude
your
part?
city, in your little city, right? And you took the same amount from each one, you could actually say this is the percentage we're taking from each one. Well, when you raise your tax rate, you're taking a little more from each one. It would be even in that case. It's a lot harder to do when values are different and improvements are made and these types of things. The one thing that I do think we need to, as a council, tell our residents, if you're having an increase above a certain percentage, there is a state program that you can get part of that rebated back to you. So I would encourage you to check into that.
Thank you, sir. The only thing that I would say with that, Matt, is that our tax rate has gone down significantly from last year to this year. If that's what you're using as the benchmark, our tax rate goes down by 7-8 points, something like that, from last year to this year.
Yeah, and it went from 36 to 41 point something, and then almost.
Which was
to
a
40
recession.
Almost to 46, and then back down. Well, in that recession, that's the time not to spend. So, and
Okay.
but we did spend. So
Very good. Yes, sir.
Evening. My name is Kevin Gillick, 136 6th Avenue East, paying property taxes as a resident, and my wife at 333 2nd Avenue West, paying property taxes as a commercial enterprise. First, I just want to say I get it. All right, property values go up. When your property is worth more, you're going to pay more for the taxes. So I get it. I understand that. What I don't subscribe to is that overall you're looking at a 3-point-something% increase. Mine's going up 17.4%. The city of Shakopee line item is 20%. So while years ago it might have been difficult to put together a budget because we were facing years where many people had flat income or unemployment, I don't subscribe to the notion that that situation is gone. We have a lot of people who are struggling, and I think it's difficult to absorb this type of a 20% increase at a city level. So I've got two questions of the council tonight. One is, of the $500 and some thousand increase that looks like your growth year upon year, what is the figure that has been abated in taxes for all the companies that came in that we said, look, your commercial property is also going to go up, which means your taxes should go up on that, but we're going to abate you that difference. Now, I asked you, I came here before because I was pretty opposed to the tax abatement thing. But if we collected the taxes that we are intending to abate, how much of that $500,000 would be offset?
Well, yeah, please do.
Just based on the information I received from Scott County today, the abatement for the one abatement that we currently have, which is data card, it is approximately $5,500 every 6 months. That's the one abatement that's in the 2014. Now, the tax increment, that is the pay-as-you-go TIF. Right now, for the total year 2014, it totals roughly $78,000.
Okay, so 78,000, and that includes Shutterfly and all these other ones?
Some of those are too new.
On the book, yeah.
Okay.
None of those are on this tax year.
My point is, I still don't know what our strategy is on tax abatement and why we can't have those dollars coming in to offset what we pay as residents and existing commercial enterprises. I asked what that strategy was. This council said, we really don't have one. We need to work on one. Go back to the record, because I asked. And at the time, the strategy was, we'll field any proposal that seems reasonable. And my question to the council was, does that mean as long as there is an open commercial property or undeveloped land, you will continue to do tax abatements without a ceiling? And your answer was yes. Now, I want to know if that's still the position of the council.
Of the council, we can't say. Councilor Whiting?
Well, we did put together a plan since then, and we were working at it at the time, because I do recall the conversation. We were working on that business incentive plan, and now it's in place. So we do have that in place now. That's something that we struggled with and decided how we're going to work with that. When we first started doing it was during a recession time. Now we're working our way out of that. So things have changed, and we do have a plan in place.
Councilor Lehman?
We actually, what we adopted was a policy on criteria to see if of eligibility for companies that come to Shakopee. We didn't do anything with a cap. We didn't do anything with quantity or land. All we strictly did in our policy was to set what the criteria is for us to even consider a company to be eligible.
Okay, I contend that as a resident and somebody whose commercial enterprise doesn't get the benefit of an abatement, that I'd like to see that practice stopped, seriously curtailed, or critically scrutinized before we move forward with any more of it. My second and final point is Ms. Wilson talked about a lot of budget line items where we needed to take bolder action than we've done in the past. I applaud the city of Minneapolis. I don't know if you saw the newspaper today. They took a bold action. They decided that they couldn't pass along the increase that they wanted to their taxpayers because they said they needed to soften the blow of levy increases for taxpayers, and they cut $620,000 out of the budget to make it easier. Now, I understand that we have more programs and more personnel coming on board, and I'm not going to say that they aren't valuable. But what I'd like to know is what programs you did look at that have been cut. Or are we looking at a budget where everything is a sacred cow, nothing has been cut, and we're simply adding to it? Because I would contend we need to take some bold action like Minneapolis and shave a few things. Has anything been cut? And could you tell me what it is and how much we saved? Because otherwise that $500,000 increase would have been $1 million had you not cut some things. Is there anything you could?
Fire training chief, just cut that earlier tonight for 1 year for sure. I don't know what the value is, 80,000 maybe?
But we can hardly call that a cut if it wasn't an increase yet.
No,
that's a
exactly. I mean, I'm
little
looking
distant,
at what was in the budget where we fundamentally changed the baseline before we looked at the new increases. Were there any programs or projects that?
Yes, we consistently through the budgeting process, and this falls on department heads and Ms. Linehan and Mr. McNeil for handling that budget item piece. And so we consistently look all through everything that we deliver as a city. So we'll take park and rec programs, for example, and we do it on that type of level. So as a program is or is not working within park and rec, things get added and things get cut consistently. Does that end up flowing to the bottom line specifically on the budgets where we at council can stand up here and wield an axe and cut money out of the budget? No, that's not the way that we work our budget line items. 2 years ago, we did that. We cut from up here. We cut, what was it, 75 grand from the budget from active programs for like the cable access and for communication things that we were doing that just didn't work. And we've been consistently doing those kinds of things as we go along through the years. And I feel that staff does a very good job of pulling things that don't work. But as things come up that do work, that do not work, they get pulled back out of what we deliver as a city. And all the department heads do that on a consistent basis. Ms. Wilson, do you have something you want to say?
Mr. Mayor, if I could add, there's also multiple instances of where we've looked at ways to continue offering the service we offer, but to do so in a more cost-effective manner, or we've looked for less expensive ways of doing things. As Ms. Linehan noted, our employee health insurance is down for 2015. We're spending less money on employee health insurance next year than we did this year. Our Scott County joint prosecution costs, we've restructured how that's funded and paid for, and that's going to result in a savings to the city's budget. Our costs for the Fire Relief Association's pension are down next year due to increases in investment earnings. So there's a variety of places, while we have not, crossed the program off and forced it to cease to exist, where we have found a more cost-effective means of providing the service. The transit service that the city is providing, we've just approved a merger with other entities, and that's an effort to respond to changing market conditions and manage the funds that we do have available for transit in a way that they create a greater return on investment by partnering with other folks. So there's a lot of things in those lines that don't result in, well, we're no longer providing transit. That's not true, but we're doing it in a more effective manner.
Great, and when you add all of that up, would you describe that as bold action? Would you categorize it as that?
Tends not to.
That's good management, which if we're going to compare Minneapolis and Shakopee, those are two very different animals.
I just encourage you to continue to challenge yourselves on that front, because up isn't infinitely scalable for the public.
Thank you. Mr. McNeil had something to say?
I just wanted to add to what Ms. Wilson was saying. I think also through the leadership of Ms. Linehan, we also looked at what we were putting into particular funds in terms of equipment rental and building rent and things such as that, so that we can continue to be with enough funding that when we need to replace equipment or we need to replace rooftop air conditioning units, things like that, money is available, and we don't have to, there's no risk then to use Ms. Canaan's concerns that we're going to be bankrupt on that we can go in, we're prepared for that, but we really looked at, did we have to have as much? And so we think it's a reasonable amount now, but it's less than it would have been under old formulas.
Councilor Lehman?
Mr. Gillick, the bottom line is the levy's going up $1 million. There's 14,000 residential properties in Shakopee. 14,000 divided, or 1 million divided by 14,000, you're gonna see increases.
I don't think you read your packet.
We're raising the levy about $1 million.
Okay.
15.2 to 16.2 after the reductions.
And to Mr. Lehman's point before.
So you can't talk from out there, sorry. You gotta either come up to the microphone. Thank you, because it's not recorded then, so, thank you. All right, anyone else? If you can make it really quick for me, please.
You never let me talk, so.
I never let you talk.
I'm thanking Counselor Lehman for mentioning this, that you can on your income tax, if your increase in value has gone up enough, you do get a certain amount of back. However, the assessors in Shakopee, in Scott County, are well aware of this, and if you look at mine, for example, it's only 9.5%, so that doesn't qualify. So I encourage everybody to really be aware, especially if someone has gone up like 20%, to look on your income tax and try to get some money back.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Yes.
Hi, Christetta Barini, Shakopee Valley News. I am curious if the council could please spell out how and if funding for downtown improvements that were talked about earlier this year is still in the budget, and also if the Parks and Rec, the sports center and the cultural center projects were to go through, how those would be, how those might affect a 2015 budget. I'll take my question seated. Thank you.
Off the air?
Yeah.
Mr. McNeil?
Mr. Mayor, $500,000 is in the budget for downtown. This is the first of 3 years of $500,000 to go towards improvements, which were discussed by the council in August. The direction that the staff got from council at the last meeting was to do a study so that we would know what the fiscal impacts would be of the proposed improvements, and that, if the council approves that tonight, would be again immediately and bring back within 90 days.
All right.
Can I ask one quick question?
Please.
That's kind of been on my mind for a long time here. I don't know who does the emails and who gets all those. I think, is that you, sir, that might get the blogs and stuff about the train noise and a lot, all that stuff. I think there was a 2012 thread online or whatever. And I was just wondering, since we're talking about the downtown improvements, is there, I know it's a very odd the city we live in because of the trains going straight through it, but I was just, since I live next to it, since I hear it all night, I was just wondering, is in the future, what steps may be took to, I guess, quiet the noise, cancel out, different intersections, which obviously is going to create more traffic flow.
We'll let Councilor Luce take that one.
Because I know it's like in the number one, complaint.
Yeah.
Pay attention to the next council meeting, it's coming up.
Okay.
What-
That's,
If I could add, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, that $500,000 was part of that study to look at what the impacts and how that might go forward.
I think I was reading the, what do you want to call it, the regulations or federal, whatever you want to call them.
FRA.
I think that was
Statutes or what
posted
have you.
somewhere.
There was one about a quiet zone, how you can federally reestablish a quiet zone in the city, and I don't know if that's.
Yep, we are working on that
something like that.
currently. We will be looking at doing a study to figure out what it would take. It's really expensive to do quiet zone, and it would require shutting down crossings and things like that. So we need to get a really good handle on what that would cost, how we would get it done, and when we want to get it done. And so that is something that will be coming in the future. There's a little bit in here for looking at that, but not to actively get that done yet.
Okay, that'll be coming in August? This coming August, that will be.
Oh,
oops,
it's
sorry,
coming the
discussed?
next council meeting, 2 weeks.
Okay,
we'll be talking about.
Excellent. Thank
Councilor
you.
Lehman.
Come on back.
Sir, what's his name again?
Christopher Taylor.
Mr. Taylor, I think I've been working on this railroad thing since about 2002. It's a very difficult situation. The railroad is operated one step up from Congress.
Right.
They have their own little thing going on.
'Cause it's
And they have a group called the FRA, Federal Railroad Authority, that decides the safety aspects of a corridor.
Yep,
Um,
I read that.
So they've kind of got a monopoly on that themselves. So we have to go through their process to figure out what it takes to make it safe enough,
Right.
and then what is the cost to do that. And then not only is there a cost problem with it, associated with it, but if you have to close a bunch of crossings, now you have a transportation routing issue that needs to be looked at, or you're gonna end up overwhelming Marshall Road.
Don't they usually, our council, don't they usually come back and reevaluate the safety procedures that you put into place and then go from there, don't they? Is that?
The way that works, if you read their own documentation, it basically says, and I don't want to take all night on this, sorry.
Yeah, we're gonna move on.
I know, I
Yeah.
opened a
The way
can
it
of worms
works
and I just
is,
want to make it
if
sure.
if they said you had to do X, Y, and Z, and we do X, Y, and Z, a no-whistle zone, they reserve the right to come back in any time, inspect it, and say, you know, we've changed our minds, you need to do X, Y, and Z above and beyond in order to keep it.
Right.
Which is, plus all the liability falls on the city of Shakopee if anybody's hurt.
Right.
So there's a couple of issues that I don't agree with, but we'll have to work the process, see where it goes.
We're working on it.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it.
Anyone else like to speak? All right. Thanks for visiting. All right. So we will end the public meeting portion of the night, and then we'll go to council for any final questions, things they'd like to talk about, and then entertain a motion, and then we'll amend the motion as it goes. So as soon as someone is ready, I'd like a motion as it was presented, and then we'll amend it if we can.
Yeah. We have before you the three separate resolutions.
Yes, so we'll start with 7516. Councilor Whiting.
Make a motion to adopt Resolution 7516, or a resolution adopting the 2015 budget.
Do we have a second? Second by Councilor Mokel. All right, discussion. Councilor Lehman.
Is there gonna be an amendment to that motion to,
You're making it right now, yeah.
Yep. Offer a friendly amendment to remove the fire safety training officer from the budget.
Okay, do we have a second for that?
Did we want to ask to postpone that or just leave it as stated?
I think we can just give direction that
Yeah.
we
I'll
we
accept
don't-
that as a friendly amendment.
Kathy has to accept it too, doesn't she?
No, these are just amendments.
Mr. Mayor, I
It
think
doesn't
we
need to
should
be friendly
proceed as not
amendments.
friendly,
Yeah.
just.
It's just an
amendment.
amendment to the motion.
On the agenda?
All right, so we have a motion by Councilor Lehman to remove, do we have a number on that?
Yes, the number that was associated with this was a 77,472. Now, this is in the new initiatives, okay?
Mhm.
Those are not included in your expenditures here.
Okay,
They are, so you don't need to adjust the adopting 2015 budget resolution.
okay.
It is simply a reduction that would come through your initiatives, which would simply reduce the amount of fund balance you're going to use.
Okay. Any discussion? Everybody understand what we're doing here?
Mr.
Councilor
Mayor,
Lewis.
I have a question.
You were the most important one to ask that question,
That's
sir.
good,
Thank
Jim.
you.
I always love it when the attorney
Ms. Lennon,
comes.
are you saying that in the general fund line item budget for
Right.
fire,
Right,
the 1,907,846
right.
does not include the
It
77,472?
does not include that because that is a new initiative that is funded through fund balance.
Okay, and that's true for all the other new initiatives?
Correct, for the other additions of the positions.
All right. So we're okay doing this?
No difference in levy.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
so we don't need to identify
The
the dollar
difference will
amount.
be in the levy, is that what you?
You could either adjust the levy, or you could simply reduce the amount of fund balance you're going to use. You have two options,
Okay. So it doesn't need, nothing needs to be done on the budget?
not
Okay.
on the budget piece, no.
I would rather reduce the levy, is that okay?
Correct.
We can
But that's the second
adjust and
motion.
reduce depending upon your council action.
Okay, because we can just adjust the motion down by 77,472, which will reduce the levy by 77,472.
Yeah, which would be on your resolution 7517. Okay?
The next one.
Right now, you're on 7516,
Okay,
the budget.
all right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a motion, and we have a second, was that correct? Who seconded it, just for clarity?
I'll second it.
You seconded by Councilor Mogul? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, any discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Passes 4-1. Why did you do that?
Because it's too big of an increase.
Oh, well, no, we were just voting on the amendment.
Oh, well, I'm in favor of the amendment.
I don't understand.
Well, we're
Mr.
voting-
Mayor,
Point of order.
the motion that was on the floor was a resolution adopting the budget. There was never an amendment because Ms. Lanahan clarified we didn't need to amend this one. So,
Just-
I apologize.
yeah, so if anybody
Okay.
understand, that's what they were voting on, though.
I was confused as to what I was voting on then as well. I'm sorry. I thought we still had to do it for the next, sorry.
On the budget.
All right, so we voted on the budget. Everyone's, do we need to revote or are we okay? Anyone uncomfortable with the 4-1 there?
There was a 4-1 vote in favor of adopting the budget with Councilmember Lehman in
dissent.
dissent.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so 7516 is in the books.
Yep.
7517. Council Whiting?
Make a motion to adopt Resolution 7517, a resolution setting the 2014 property tax levy collectible in 2015 with the following adjustments. Removal of $77,472 for the fire department training chief. And 1/3 of the IT staff budget.
Council Lehman?
I'll second it.
Okay.
But one of the issues we have, and this is, Chris and I discussed this, we at this point would have to go back and look at which position, when it was scheduled to start, what staggered one do we pull off, and we don't have that number for you tonight. My recommendation from a standpoint of trackability, that would be one of just a simple ability to reduce the use of fund balance. We clearly know what the fire piece is. We do not right now have the documents that show us if you took a person, was it the first, second, or third hired, what was the date? We don't have that this evening.
Council Lehman?
Couldn't we reduce the levy using fund balance by a number to 250,000?
And use fund balance, you mean?
Yep.
Exactly, except what you're dealing with here is you've got a levy of 16,300,000. Okay? That levy still requires use of fund balance.
Yep.
Okay, so you're saying you want to reduce this by 250,000 and make it a levy of 16,050?
Yep.
Okay,
Let's focus on the motion that's on the floor for
Right.
now.
so we have the first one, which reduces the 16,300,000, reduced by 77,472.
And
The
third-
motion currently is plus 1/3 of the
IT staff.
IT staff, which has been seconded by Councilor Lehman.
Just so we're clear. Okay, the motion that's on the table is to do the proposed budget, proposed levy, deleting 77,472, and deleting 1/3 of 253,603. That's a dollar amount.
But that's not an accurate assessment because we don't have a third.
I understand that, but
Right.
that is the
That's the
motion.
motion.
That is the motion that's on the table.
Councilor Lehman, we're in discussion mode.
Yep, Mayor, what I was trying to do is instead of, because they don't have actuals, is I was trying to say, okay, 77 and 1/3 for the IT would equal roughly about this much. Get rid of the positions and just lower the levy by that amount using fund balance, and it's cleaner, in my mind.
Then I would just recommend a $16,200,000 levy. That gives you 100,000.
But the fire position is 77.
77
and a
with
third of the IT is
23,000, which would be like the last position hired. It would be roughly that amount.
Here, well, I'm going to say before we go much further, I'm not in favor of this motion. I'm very much in favor of removing the 77,472, but I would like to keep the full IT amount in there for now, We can always in the future, if we do not like the plan that is put forward for the IT department, we can pull it back. And that is just adding fund balance into our general fund, and we're okay with that. In a perfect world, we would know exactly what we were going to do, but that's okay. We can deal with this. So I would like to move forward with the full balance in there for the IT department, because we are woefully inadequate on IT and what we're able to deliver to especially to our employees, and then secondly to our residents and businesses. And this is one way that we can exponentially improve the services and the cost of services that we deliver by making these moves, and then be able to handle it from there. Councilor Whiting?
My thoughts on it is I really don't think we'll have that fifth position filled within a year. Because we need to get somebody that's going to lead this group. We're going to.
But the fifth position is only a tiny piece of this.
Well,
so
but even so, a third of that dollar amount is still. I mean, it's going to be months before we get somebody hired for the one position, and I know you've factored some of that into that. And this is not a fully loaded position or fully loaded 3 positions, but I think we can get by with that. And if we do get that next position, we can fund it through other sources if the council feels at that time that it's necessary. So that's my position.
Okay, Ms. Wilson has something she would like to say?
Mr. Mayor and council members, I would just clarify that while we were looking at 3 positions, we weren't necessarily looking at 3 equal positions. We were looking at an IT director, which is a department head or close to level, an additional user support person, and then an administrative assistant type position. So they have 3 very different salary, grades and costs to them. So by just, lobbing off a third, we may decide we don't need the assistant position, but we want the director and the user support position. And if you lob off a third, I may not have enough money for those 2 positions that we've decided we do want. Not knowing that this was, going to come up tonight, I don't have a recommendation for you of how exactly we would do 4 instead of 5, and which one of the envisioned 5 positions would go away, and which one will go away determines how much we save as a result of that. So I hear the direction very clearly that, there seems to be willingness to consider 2, and that the third one makes people uncomfortable, and that we really need to look at the results of the strategic plan. But I'm just concerned by the notion of, we'll just take a third off. That may hamper our ability to implement the plan, even if acknowledging that we might not go to 5.
Councilor Whiting?
Mr. Mayor, but correct me if I'm wrong, a third is pretty arbitrary. I understand that. It doesn't take a look at any of the facts on what positions we're filling. But if we come to that position, you could come back to the council with a recommendation, and we could find it from other sources if it's necessary.
It's an option.
That's my thought.
Mr. Neal?
And Mr. Loney reminds me of your earlier report on Spuck with an additional amount of tax of $97,000, which could be a source of that.
Agree.
Councilor Lehman?
Just so we're all aware, over the course of the year, I had all kinds of recommendations to cut all kinds of money. I just got outvoted by this council. And that's the way it goes.
You feel better?
I do.
Good.
Okay.
All right, so motion on the floor is 77,472 plus. Do we have another dollar amount?
Mr. Mayor,
Thompson?
perhaps my math is bad, but let's hope not.
14
By
million
doing
sounds
the
good,
math,
thanks.
the motion, the effect of the motion is to reduce the operating levy that was proposed at $16,300,000, to reduce it by, it's basically $138,000. 77 plus 1/3. So the new levy would be $16,138,000. That's the effect of the motion.
Okay.
All right.
And as long as we'll have fund balance to cover that if we need it for the IT, we're okay?
Correct. It's just that when you're dealing with a study that isn't quite done yet, it does put staff in a situation where we may not be able to proceed knowing we have to work within this issue. I mean, we can bring it back for refunding, but what has been presented is based on the strategic needs of this department.
Okay.
And I can honestly speak to you from a finance perspective, and I will back Ms. Wilson. We are woefully inadequate on IT, woefully.
Councilor Lehman.
But we don't know that. The study hasn't been done yet.
I can tell you there are many, many days we are not able to address workflows and projects because we do not have the staff. And having your public funds in a department where things simply can't get done because you don't have the people, to me, is a short-sighted solution.
We added a lot of people in 18 months.
We are talking IT. Nothing has been added there.
And we've been understaffed in IT for how long now, Chris?
We've had one.
As long as I've been here.
We've been at 2 people for over 10 years.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and currently we've had 1 person for the last 3 months.
We have
4
a
months?
vacancy.
Try 8 months.
Yeah,
Approved
8 months
position.
has it been already? Wow. Councilor Luce.
With all the security mandates from the state with regard to IT, we are going to have to move people in. I agree that we want to cut where we can. What's the total dollar amount we're talking here? What, 100,000?
130,000.
138,000 between the
Okay,
two.
and you're talking that we're
parts
going to
of
get 90,000 from
Right.
Spuck.
7, yeah.
So we've got the reserve for whatever the study comes out, and then we can decide and use that as funds.
This doesn't get levied.
Right, but we've got a cushion of basically $100,000, so I
And
say,
Mayor and council, as Mr. Luce is referring, he sat through a session I had brought to this group on PCI compliance. It is a project that's still ongoing. We are not in compliance. We have to be in compliance. Rachel is doing the best she can, but I'm telling you, we have issues that we can't address with the current staff.
It's a government mandate. It's going to be extremely expensive.
It's not a government mandate. This is one that's put on due to the issues that are related to fraud, credit cards, and other issues.
All right, so we are at pulling the levy down by $138,000 with the understanding that that is for the assistant eliminating for this budget cycle the assistant fire chief position, as well as pulling back additional funds from what was proposed for IT, knowing that other money is coming through. Anyone have concerns or everyone on the general path that we still need to be looking at the full IT department and still looking at funding that in the future, correct?
Mayor, I'd like
Just
to
not within this.
I'd like to see what the study comes back as, because it's very possible that if the needs are going to be that great, we might be better off hiring it out. We don't know until we have the information.
I agree with you entirely that is part of what will be coming back to us and the discussion that we will be having in the future. I just don't want to send the message to everyone tonight by taking this action that we are in the future not hiring, not looking at the full options that will be presented to us. That's all I'm trying to clarify,
Right.
is that we will be looking at the full
Yep.
options that are presented to us in the future. We're just going to be using fund balance to pay for it if we choose to go that direction.
Correct.
Okay? Mr. Thompson?
Mr. Mayor, I just need to correct one thing. The reduction is 162,000. So the new levy would be 16,138,000.
Did I say it wrong, or did you
You said the
redo your math?
reduction was 138,000. The reduction
Okay.
from the proposed is actually 162. So the new levy would be 16,138,000.
All right, everyone clear?
Write down your math.
All right, any further discussion?
Was that right?
Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. All right, that was 75-17. Now we need 75-18.
Might as well go, Jim.
I'm on a roll. You know, I hate canceling debt, but I'll offer Resolution 7518, a resolution canceling debt service levies for 2014 and 2015.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Counselor Mokel. Any discussion? Counselor Lehman.
If it was that easy, we would all just cancel our debts and we'd be debt-free. That's not how it works. We've explained that tonight.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thank you. And I do want to pass on a big thank you to the city staff, the department heads, and the work that has been done and undertaken by finance and administration. And being this is the last budget I'll be working with you on, thank you.
Julie, thank you so
Really
much.
appreciate it.
Thank you, Julie.
Good job on this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Make sure you leave the money printer downstairs when you go.
It's that 3D printer I got figured
Don't
out.
give Matt the key to it.
All right. We're going to move on to item 10D1, adoption of 2015 wages and amendment to the personnel handbook for paid on-call firefighters. Ms. Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. Earlier on tonight's agenda, the council took the annual actions of setting non-union wages, part-time, temporary, and seasonal wages for the city's employees. The third group of employees that we have is our paid-on-call firefighters, and it has typically been an annual action of the council to set their wages at this time of year as well. Tonight I have a recommendation for you that we make some substantial changes to not only the dollar amount of the wages, but also the terms and conditions under which we pay those wages. So here we go. Basic HR slide for you here. Total compensation is generally what we try to look at when we are examining wages, which is a combination of the direct hourly wage and other benefits received. In the case of our paid-on-call firefighters, that means their hourly wage plus their Relief Association pension. Shakopee has traditionally been a high pension, lower hourly wage department. Among relief associations with lump sum benefit plans, the type of relief association that the city has, Shakopee's benefit level is in the 99th percentile based on the most recent available data. So we lead the state in the pension that we provide to our paid-on-call firefighters among comparable cities. And we have you have authorized an increase to that pension. At this time last year, you approved a 3-phase increase to the pension. It had been a benefit of $7,500 per year of service. This year it went to $7,600, and there are 2 more benefit increases scheduled. So that's the second half of the picture. That's the pension benefit side of the coin. And no changes recommended to that beyond what was already approved for 2015 and 2016. The rest of my information will focus on the other side of the equation, which is the hourly wage portion. On January 1st, 2004, the city authorized a wage increase for its paid-on-call firefighters and established an hourly wage of $10 per hour. That amount has been increased once since then, and that was on January 1st, 2012, and the wage was increased by 50 cents per hour. It's probably no surprise that that wage doesn't have the buying power today that it did back in 2004. To give you a better sense of what we've lost in buying power, according to the U.S. Department of Labor, $10 per hour in 2004 is the equivalent of $12.60 per hour today. You'd need $12.60 per hour to maintain your buying power due to inflation and market conditions. Another way to look at our wages that we pay is as a comparison or a percentage of the minimum wage. In 2004, when the city set the hourly wage at $10 per hour, it was 194% of the minimum wage, which both federal and state minimum wage was identical then at $5.15. As our wage has stagnated and the minimum wage has gone up at least a little bit, we're now to 145% of the federal minimum wage and 131% of the state minimum wage. So we've lost ground on that comparison as well. The third comparison I have for you is a comparison to other metro cities and what they provide as an hourly wage for their paid-on-call firefighters. I have a number of cities listed here. You can find a few that pay what we pay or a little bit less. But the average of this group is $13.25 an hour. So we have fallen below average on our wage. What I am recommending tonight is that the city take steps to return the buying power of the wage that we are paying to our paid-on-call firefighters, and that we also make some pay policy changes that, in my opinion, are long overdue. There are several ways that we pay our firefighters that are inconsistent with how we pay any other employee of the city, and I believe you would find them inconsistent with the pay practices that most of our residents and taxpayers experience in their employment situation. Currently, we round everything up to the next full hour. And I'm recommending that instead we only round the first hour up, so a guaranteed minimum of an hour's pay for every call. And that with time for calls in excess of 1 hour being rounded to the nearest quarter hour rather than automatically up. So currently, a call that lasts 1 hour and 3 minutes is paid as 2 hours. Under the new proposal, a call that lasts 1 hour and 3 minutes would be paid as an hour, because 3 minutes rounds down to 1 hour and not up to 15. Secondly, I recommend that we cease paying separately for overlapping calls or calls coming in during meetings, drills, trainings, any other paid activity of the fire department. If you're on the clock with the city, you're on the clock, and you should be paid from your start time to your end time. Currently, an example would be the department trains or drills on Monday evenings. They are generally a large portion of the department, but not everybody is present. If a call comes in at a 7:30 on a Monday evening, we're paying everybody for being there at that training, say from 6:30 to 8:30, and then we also pay them an hour's pay or more, depending on the length of the call, for the call that comes in, even though they're already on the clock and they're already being paid for those minutes. I think that that practice should no longer be the case. Additionally, I'm recommending that we no longer pay for calls not attended, regardless of why. Credit will still be given for their attendance percentage, which firefighters need to maintain in order to be eligible for their pension credit for the year, for firefighters that are at another fire department activity. An example of this would be, there might be a sectional school going on in St. Cloud. Currently, if they are in St. Cloud for, say, 2 days, like a weekend, and calls come in during the evening, we're paying them for those calls that are happening back here in Shakopee, even though they're off in St. Cloud at training. They were paid for the hours that they were in training in St. Cloud, and the city is picking up their overnight costs and their meal and travel costs as well. I don't believe we should also be paying for the calls that are happening back here at home, that the firefighter is not in attendance at. And lastly, no more signing into calls unless you are prepared to get on a truck. We have emphasized response coming to the station for many years, as I understand it. Unfortunately, we have some employees that are showing up at the station not in a position to actually get on a truck and serve the public. 2 examples of those would be coming to the station with young children who cannot be left in tow, and being at the station with those children while the others who come respond to the call, and still signing in and being paid for that time. And a second example would be people stopping by on their way to their full-time job and then not getting on the truck because they need to get to their full-time job. I certainly respect their need to get to the full-time job. As a paid-on-call firefighter, we rely on you to respond when you're available. You just shouldn't be responding if you're not truly available. So those are the policy changes that I'm recommending. How this all shakes out in terms of dollar amounts. I looked at all of our calls for the first 9 months of this calendar year, January 1 to September 30th. We had 502 hours of possible, calls to be paid in the department, and at $10.50 an hour, that's a lump sum of $5,271. If you go back through each and every one of those calls and say, under the new policies, how much would we have paid? We would have a total of 462.75 hours. In order to make this, the goal here is not to reduce the payment to the firefighters. The goal is to be more transparent, more above board, have a more professional set of payroll policies that match what we do with our other city employees. So an increase to $11.39 per hour makes these policy changes income neutral to the firefighter. Does that make sense? Okay. So, I'm recommending $1 increase in the hourly wage to compensate for the changes in rounding, and no longer dual paying when we have overlapping calls or calls that are lined up with training. And secondly, I'm recommending a $2.50 increase in the hourly wage due to inflation and market comparisons, that buying power issue. So it's a two-part increase. That would bring our hourly wage from $10.50 an hour to $14 an hour, which puts us above average and more in line with some of the cities that you saw on that chart as to market comparison. We currently have a probationary firefighter wage that is $10 compared to the $10.50 we pay to the people who've completed their initial schooling. The chief and I are recommending that we maintain that notion of a probationary wage and that we separate them just a little bit more. So that would be set at $13 an hour under the recommendations. My estimate of how much this will cost the city is $62,000. That's looking at historical numbers of how many firefighters have responded to calls and how many calls we've had. If we have a significant shift in the number of calls for service next year, or suddenly our attendance at those calls changes significantly, that cost number will change as well. It's much harder to estimate our paid on-call wage cost than for, say, someone that's a full-time employee and I say 40 hours a week times 52 weeks a year, and here's your exact number. This is a much more challenging amount to estimate. This is accomplished in two ways. One is by adopting the resolution that is in front of you. That resolution sets the probationary wage at $13 an hour and the non-probationary wage at $14 an hour. It also carries over the existing salary amounts paid to our part-time officers of the department. I know there was some talk earlier in the meeting and interest in re-looking at what is paid to the training chief. I would ask the council to consider adopting the resolution as presented. It lines us up well to proceed with payroll in the coming weeks as we move into the new year. We can always amend the resolution at a future meeting to address that training chief issue, as may or may not be needed once we bring you more information. The second motion that is necessary to go along with this two-part recommendation, which is the policy changes combined with the pay increases, is an adoption of a second resolution that amends the personnel handbook, and that's where we lay out the policies of under what circumstances we pay individual employees. I think that's all the information I have. I did present these recommendations and the logic and the reasoning for them to the employees of the fire department at a department meeting a couple of weeks ago and stood for questions. I believe there are a handful of firefighters in the audience tonight who may or may not wish to address you on the issue as well.
Thank you. Any questions? Councilor Lehman.
Okay. I guess first is a comment and then a couple questions. I don't want to compare paid on-call firefighters to an average employee, and I'll tell you why. Average employees, if it's a holiday on the calendar, city is closed. Paid on-call firefighters, if it's a holiday on the calendar, they have to go. Okay, Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve, Thanksgiving, these holidays, they're expected to leave their families and go. City Hall's not open. Public Works, if it's an emergency, is. But so they don't really compare. They don't get the paid vacation, the sick time, the paid holidays, federal holidays. So it's not really a comparison to an average employee. Okay, that's just my personal feel on it. My questions that I have, I don't have any problem with your recommendations from hours and stuff like that, just a couple clarification things. The rounding to the next quarter, it seems like that's a far stretch from going to the next hour and then just backing off. And if it's 1 hour and 3 minutes, you're going to an hour. If it's an hour and 8 minutes, you're going to an hour and 15 minutes. It sounds to me like it's almost like a statistician's nightmare. I mean, who is going to really watch each person, click the stopwatch, and figure out, do I round it this way or this way? Is there an easier way to do it to a little bit broader of a time?
Councilmember Lehman, I would argue there's an easy way to do it as proposed. Currently, the officer on the call is responsible for entering the dispatch time of the call and the clear time of the call, and the software will calculate how many hours. It's same as our timesheet software that we use for our hourly workers in the Parks and Recreation Department. It will calculate, we enter the rules, and it will say, you know, if the call dispatched at this time and cleared at this time, then it's paid an hour and a quarter, or 2.5, or 1. You know, it'll set up like that.
Is the clear time when they're back at the station, the truck is parked, it's stocked, it's ready to go again, or is it when they actually drive away from the scene?
No, it's when they have cleared the station. The truck has been restocked and they are in a ready position to respond to a capture call. Up the chief's standing on my shoulder.
I'm sorry, I can give you clear. What we do right now, we're running 2 stations, so as the trucks return back to the station, whoever's in charge or in command of that call, the Station 2 and Station 1 call that commander and say, we are clear, which means that their truck is back in service, ready to go, and they're ready to go home. And that's when we clear the call with the county.
All right, so then I want to make sure we're paying them for their time and not from when they drive away from the curb at the house or something. And then the other one I had was, there's a practice that sometimes these fire guys shoot out the door. They might have a kid in tow, and they get to the fire station, and you might find a couple of kids there watching a movie, having popcorn or whatever, and somebody designated to watch them. I don't want to make it, how do I word this? I don't want to make it so that people don't respond. And I almost see it as if I had my grandson with me right now and I said, Chris, you want to watch him for a minute? I'm going to step outside. I'm taking the initiative to trust you to watch that child. And I can gauge on whether I can trust you or somebody I don't know. And as a parent, the parent can make that decision, especially with people that have had background checks that work for us, that they work with on a regular basis. So I don't want to give a disincentive for a response time, especially if it could alter somebody's life to get to a house or to a fire or to whatever.
My response to that, Councilmember Lehman, is somewhat twofold. I don't think the city should have to pay for someone to watch your children. And I don't think that that's a reasonable use of taxpayer dollars. I certainly want to encourage people to respond. I want to encourage people who are available to truly respond and get on the truck to respond. And those are the people I think the city should be paying, not the people that are coming to the station, but for one reason or another, are not available to respond and get on the truck. Secondly, the policy is not that you cannot bring your children to the station. It was asked in the meeting where this was discussed with the employees of the fire department, and the city's fire stations have long been open to children that are capable of self-care. So if you have a child maybe grade school age, or that's with you when the call comes out and you want them to come to the station, we have a lounge with a television, and you'll find some pop in the fridge and a variety of things. So this is not a no kids in the fire station policy. That's not what this is at all. This is if you're going to come and sign into the call, you need to be prepared to get on the truck. I think it's a very rare occasion that this all works out magically, where someone comes and is available to babysit the kids, and that suddenly frees up a significant number of firefighters to get on the truck. The truck is gone by then, with the 4, 3, or 5 firefighters needed to get that first truck out the door. And the chief can correct me if I'm wrong, but
So who makes that call?
who makes what call?
Well, let's say I'm a fire guy and I'm with my kids somewhere or whatever, and a pager goes off, and I drive over to the station, and meantime I got to call into my wife to come pick up our child. The truck's getting ready to go, somebody else is there, maybe they're willing to watch my child for a minute or two. I jump on the truck, I know my wife's coming to pick him up from somebody I trust. Does that person then get paid for that call?
If they're leaving them with someone, say there's another spouse of another firefighter that's there and willing to watch them, then that makes the firefighter who has responded available to get on the truck and serve the public. I don't believe another city employee should be left with babysitting responsibilities. If that's the case, we should just have the employees stay with their own children, and we'll respond with those people that are truly ready to provide a service to the public.
So does this allow for an individual to say, I want to make myself not available and watch these kids, so take me off the list? Can somebody do that?
I suppose.
Councilor Luce.
From a few of my experiences with tracking the fire department and trying to get on a truck, there's a second set of people there. Once the truck leaves, another group of people come that doesn't make the first truck. They're on standby. There's always people there. It's not like, the truck leaves and there's nobody in the station. So there's always at least one more person there. If there's a child there, I don't see any problem with, we're paying the guy to be there just in case he's needed. If he's watching a kid.
He's not available.
99.7% of the times that second truck never rolls, but we are still paying those people.
Yes. And I don't believe we should be doing that. If they're not ready to serve the public, when we have public works employees that get callbacks, you're not next on the list. We've had this after-hour incident. And you know what they say to their supervisor? I'm sorry, I'm home alone with my young children. I'm not available. And we go to the next, person on the list. That's a reasonable employment practice. That, when you come to work, you're ready to work.
Councilor Luce.
We're not talking reasonable here. We're talking an emergency situation. These people come running, drop everything. If they've got a kid that they have to keep an eye on, they bring them to the station. My vote's going to be drop that part of it. No ifs, ands, or buts.
I think the thing that we're trying to avoid here is people who, and I don't know how often this happens, and you can help me with this, but if, and I know that it has happened, is that somebody comes to respond to a fire, and in order to tally that one, they come knowing that they can't get on a truck to get out because they've got their kids with them. And folks shouldn't be just saying that they're there to be there. They have to be there to be able to work, and I think that's reasonable.
Well, part of the equation is they've got to call in to their spouse or someone else to come and get the kid. They're waiting for the second truck to have to roll. Most times that second truck never rolls. So why should they be penalized?
Councilor Lehman.
I think I'm right in the middle here, because the first truck goes out, 4 people on it, I'm assuming. You guys are gonna laugh because I don't know much about fire departments, but okay, first truck goes out. There's still a group of folks waiting to see if the second truck is needed. They're available, we're paying them, and they're doing nothing. But what they're doing is they're waiting to see if they're really needed, because if the second truck does need to roll and call comes in, send another truck or whatever, they're there, they're ready, so we're paying them, correct?
Yes.
But they're doing nothing. What's the difference if they're standing there?
Availability. They are available. That radio comes across from the commanding officer on scene that says, I need truck 2, or I need this piece of equipment. The people that are on the clock should be available to respond to that. The availability is the difference. And I want to caution, having young children is one component of this. But we have instances of employees that were on their lunch break from their full-time job. They happened to be within a block of the station when the call came out. They came in, they signed into the call, then they got back in their car and went back to their full-time job. So it's going to be really hard to distinguish that if you're unavailable to get on the truck because you have young children, you can still sign in. But if you're unavailable to get on the truck because you need to get somewhere, and you're just passing by to sign in, no, you can't do that kind of sign in when you're unavailable, but you can do this kind of sign in when you're unavailable. I know change is hard, and we've made a lot of changes in the fire department, over the last 10 years that I'm aware of, but the time has come for this one to change, and us to expect that the employees that are on the clock, that are getting paid, are available to serve the public. Then whether their commanding officer directs them out to active service is a second issue, but the people that are on the clock should be available to serve the public.
That's not my issue. My issue is you're standing there watching this, and 2 firefighters come in with their kids. Somebody else agrees to watch their 2 kids. They're available. How are you going to know that?
I think we adopt this policy, and we explain it to our firefighters, and we tell them the policy is that you should be available. And I trust that they are honest in their timesheet reporting, just like I trust all of our other employees that they're honest in their timesheet reporting until I have reason to believe otherwise. This has been a permitted practice in the department. We will be making the statement that it is no longer a permitted practice. I will not be there to police it and stand by the time clock and look at who signs in and who doesn't sign in. At the end of the day, as with many of our other city employees, we trust that they're following policies and procedures and that they're not falsifying their timesheet, and I trust that that will be the case in the fire department as well.
Councilor Whiting.
You know, to that point, on this Resolution 7521, we are adopting pay scale for leadership people, the lieutenants and the captains and the chiefs that are responsible for enforcing these policy things. And so I think that's how this gets effectively taken care of. I'd also question, what kind of liability issue does the city have if a kid's in the fire station and gets hurt?
It's certainly not ideal, and that's a matter of growing pains and kind of setting our risk, reward level of where the city is comfortable with. What the chief and I are recommending is not a no children in the fire station policy, but a policy that does assume that risk based on our years of experience. We haven't had a major incident, and it's been a risk that we've been able to manage. So like everything else, it's kind of a balancing act in figuring out where do you draw that line. My recommendation, as you've heard, is that we draw the line that allows children that are old enough to care for themselves and be responsible in the station to remain in the station and use the lounge while their parent goes out and responds to a fire call. That's my recommendation. I think that's a reasonable level of risk. But to your question, it's not entirely without risk. The city assumes some risk in allowing that, and the employee as a parent needs to make that decision as to whether or not they're comfortable leaving their child. And that's we don't have an age limit. We don't say, 9-year-olds and up can stay, and 8-year, we leave that to the parent to decide if they believe their child is ready to stay there on their own.
Councilor Luce, and then I'll ask if anybody else wants to talk from the audience about this.
I believe we let the lieutenants and the captains police this. They've done a good job so far. You might get an instance where Chris mentioned that a guy comes in at his lunch hour because he's nearby, he punches in on a call, takes off and goes back to work. That may be the case. It may be the case also that he figured he may be needed. He could stay if he was needed. He wasn't needed because they know pretty quickly once the first truck gets there whether or not the second truck's ever going to roll. And, I would think that's very rare. I'd say just let the lieutenants and the captains police it. It's less hassle for us, and it's more friendly for our employees.
Okay.
Just a clarification, police this new policy?
Police, with the exemption of what we were talking about with children and with the coming in and just punching in and leaving. That should be the duty of the captains and lieutenants.
Okay, anyone from audience like to talk about this item? Nobody?
Never seen him this quiet.
Especially Clay.
Gotta give him something to, there you go. Does that help?
Yeah, let's not do that. All right, so let's first talk about 7521, resolution for pay. Councilor Whiting?
I'll make a motion to adopt Resolution 7521, a resolution adopting the 2015 pay plan for part-time employees for the Shakopee Fire Department. And we'll just start with that one.
Councilor Lehman?
Second.
Senator Councilor Lehman. Any discussion?
Is there anybody that wants to go to a half hour instead of the quarter hour?
That's not part of this.
Okay.
Is it?
Next one.
Yeah, that's the next one, yeah.
All right.
All right, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. 7524. Councilor Whiting?
I'll offer Resolution 7524, a resolution amending the personnel handbook for paid on-call firefighters of the city of Shakopee and move their adoption. Move its adoption.
We have a second. Councilor Mokel?
I'll second.
All right, discussion.
Discussion that we do what I requested before, that we remove the child care and the other one and leave it up to the people in charge.
Mr. Thompson?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong here. The paragraph that's in the new policy doesn't specifically talk about child or not. It just says firefighters shall be paid only for those calls responded to and for which the firefighter was prepared to serve the public as determined by the commanding officer on the call.
Yes,
That's what the
so it's already
policy
in there.
says. So, just want to clarify that this decision on whether the firefighter was available because of is under the new policy would still be made by the commanding officer on the scene. Is that
It
correct?
is, Mr. Thompson, however, I disagree with the statement that just leaving it up to them makes it clear. My suggestion would be that if you want to allow the current practice to continue, which is not my recommendation, but if that's the majority interest of the council, that you simply strike paragraph F from the proposed policies. That would be the way to, I believe, to accomplish what Councilmember Luce has proposed. So that would be the cleanest way for the council to indicate under which circumstances you are willing to pay an employee.
Okay. So,
I would like to make the amendment to strike paragraph F.
all right, does that have a second?
But doesn't the motion maker have to accept it?
Well, it has to have a second, then
All
it
right,
needs
I'll
to be voted.
second it.
And then it needs to have discussion on that, then we'll vote on it, and then we'll continue discussion on the amendment if it's, on the
Yep.
motion, if it is amended or not. So, discussion on the amendment to strike paragraph F. Yes.
Like Mr. Lou said, this is an emergency situation, and if, thank God it hasn't, but if it did, if a situation did arise where something major happened, we would be thankful that these folks are there, kids or not. And, you know, pollution control or RAR or something like that again, I'll go up there and watch the kids. Get these guys down there. To have them concentrated in one place is a benefit to this community, and there's no danger as far as, you know, a criminal watching somebody's kids. They all have background checks. They work with each other. They know each other. Their kids play together. You know, we should be encouraging.
That's not the point of this, though.
No. The
Councilman
point,
Holcomb.
they're still showing up for work. It's just whether, if they have their kids, not having an expectation to get paid for it. That's what's gonna happen. That's the difference.
Councilor Whiting.
Now, the way I heard this, and please correct me again, that if they show up with their kids, they have no expectation of being paid. But if another person or someone they trust can watch them, then they're available.
Right.
Right.
So that now they're available, now they're paid. That's how I read it.
Okay.
So somebody's gonna have to be, and I don't know who's gonna designate
Exactly.
this and find this out, but
But
somebody's
that's
gonna be
not for
watching
us.
the
That's
kids.
the policy.
Right,
That's them
what I was talking
to
about.
enforce.
The
Right,
officers.
the policy is the expectation that people are able to actually get on a truck and do the work they're getting paid for when they show up. And I think that's very fair.
Is the problem that we have people being paid that can't get on a truck at costing us $10? Is that the issue?
If you want to look at it that way, yes, I think it's more about the principle. We're trying to move in a more professional direction, be more transparent in our policies. You know, show me a job out there where you can show up and clock in and, you know, say, but I've got to keep an eye on my kids. It's not the way the work world works.
Councilor Mokel.
Work job.
Jim, I have a question for you, because if we're paying for somebody to watch somebody else's kids and it's a public building, are we liable for that individual as well?
Well, Mr. Mayor, members of council, any injury in a public building, there's always a risk of liability, and probably more of a risk if there's some employee of the city overseeing
That you're
that
paying to
person.
watch the children?
It's more of a risk. I can't say it's automatically liable. It's more of a risk.
And to counter your point there, Matt, is that if I were a firefighter, I would be much more annoyed and frustrated with people showing up knowing they cannot respond to a call.
But you don't know they can't respond.
But that's what's happening upon occasion, is that people are showing up knowing that they can't respond to a call, not just because of kids, but for other reasons. And this eliminates that, and I think that it's more fair across the board. And I trust them to work things out, that this is the policy and this is the expectation. We're setting this expectation. If there are times where it's unavoidable or if there are other things going on, then I trust that they're smart enough to work these things out with the issues that we're talking about with kids and stuff like that. But people showing up with the expectation that they will not be going on a call because they've got kids and signing in is not okay. And I think it's okay for us to say that that's not acceptable. Councilor Luce.
I'd like to ask Chief Coleman if this is a problem.
The question is it a
Do
problem?
you see it a major problem where guys bring kids all the time? Is it just
I would say there are certain individuals that do bring their kids more than other individuals bring kids.
is it frequent or is it?
I absolutely don't sit at the station and watch that constantly. I just know as we come back, there's kids around.
Is this a policy that you feel would be sound for the fire department?
Yes, I do.
Okay. All right, so we have the amendment to the motion on the floor right now to strike F from the resolution. Any further discussion on that amendment? All right, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Amendment to the motion fails with councilors Whiting, Mokel, and Mayor Tabke in dissent. All right, so we have a motion on the floor as not amended for the personnel resolution. Any further discussion on the resolution? All right, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Did you vote?
Aye, I'm good.
You're good? Okay, so passes 4-1 with Councilor Lehman in dissent. All right, I apologize, Jamie, but we're gonna take a break.
I gotta stand up.
We need a break.
You need time to
Sorry.
prepare.
10-minute recess.
Councilor Lehman, 10-minute recess. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilor Mokel. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passed unanimously. All right, we reconvene the Shakopee City Council meeting and move on to item number 10, EU1, consultant recommendations for athletic facilities and improvements to the community center.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'm actually glad for that little break because I didn't want to follow all that stuff from before. But on November 18th, the City Council directed staff to hire consultants to perform financial feasibility and architectural studies for athletic improvements to the community center. Council also directed staff that these consultants had a budget up to $75,000 to hire these professionals. Council also directed staff to obtain options for up to $25 million in city-provided funding and to be presented back to you in a few months. The components of the feasibility study for the community center include the second sheet of ice, a turf dome or field house, enhanced fitness center, an indoor-outdoor aquatic center, updated or the way the building would flow, and an indoor playground. So we have felt that going forward with this, the consultants should be similar to what we did in 2010 and hire a consultant that would specialize in the recreation amenities and feasibility study on those portions of the project, as well as hire a second architectural consultant. That worked very well in 2010. The two consultants worked very well together and worked off each other as far as what was needs and then what actually could be built and the cost to those. So as we moved forward, staff conducted 3 telephone interviews with the recreation planning and feasibility study consultant. We got 3 very good proposals from companies that are known throughout the nation. We are recommending a firm called Ballard King and Associates out of Colorado. Ballard and King completed a feasibility study for the city in 2004 that went along with the 2005 referendum. They have specialized in this field of looking at these amenities. The architectural firm selection was a little bit more challenging due to the fact that we have an aquatics component and an ice component. There are not very many architectural firms that specialize in both. Many specialize in one or the other. But we did get 2 proposals from very reputable companies here in the Twin Cities, and we are recommending tonight to you the 292 Design Group out of Minneapolis, and they have extensive experience on both aquatics and ice. We are also asking as part of the architectural study for that consultant to look at our current condition of our ice arena, knowing that the cooling system needs to be converted from the R22 to the ammonia, and to know whether or not more than 2 sheets could potentially go on the city campus. Back in 2010, or 5, I'm sorry, this was looked at as for a future possibility 3rd sheet could go. So we're going to look at that, but also then the cost, knowing what we have to put into our current ice sheet for the cooling system, what the cost of 2 new sheets on other publicly owned land, whether it's school district or city, would be more financially feasible, would come out of that study. Staff is also recommending tonight to draft requests for proposals that we can solicit to look at the programming analysis needs for the cultural and social piece to the project. This would be a phase 1 and come back to you for what the needs and the different, this person would basically meet with the different groups to look at what our community needs are for that second component of the project. Our budget impact for this, as I mentioned earlier, you directed these studies to come in under $75,000, or that was the budget for this. To retain Ballard and King for the recreational amenities portion would be $18,500. For the architectural and 292 group would be $22,500 for a total of $41,000. We do have an addition that we could add if we want color renderings when we get to that point for the architectural. That could be another $8,500. Fees for Springstead, to retain them to look at our financial options, would most likely be put into the project have we move forward. So if we issue any type of bonding, those costs be rolled into that other financial studies. We get more of an idea at that point. And then we'll determine the cost for the request for proposals when that comes in for the social and cultural piece. So we're looking for 4 recommendations from you tonight. One is to hire Ballard and King for the feasibility and planning for the community center. Sorry, now I'm going to cough. The second is to hire 292 Design Group for the architectural piece. The third is to hire Springstead for the financial options. Fourth is to direct staff to enter into a contract with all of these. And the fifth one is to issue the RFP for the programming analysis for the cultural and social piece.
Do you want a 10-minute break?
No. At least take a drink of water.
All right, formulate questions up here first, or a motion? Councilor Lehman.
Jamie, it says operational costs specific to mechanical systems of each component. At what point do we get the operational cost specific to employee needs?
That comes in with the recreation planning consultant. So the recreation planning consultant will put together our basic operation budget, including personnel, costs to run programs, equipment, that sort of thing, as well as revenues that come in. The architectural consultant will work hand in hand with that feasibility consultant, and as they design the facility, they get the cost not only for the capital cost to build the facility, but they also they know what kind of cooling system they'll put in the ice arena, so they'll give those costs to our recreational amenities consultant to put into that overall budget. So they work hand in hand, but the budget will come from
Who does that
one.
portion of it?
The
Ballard King.
Ballard King,
Okay.
yes, Ballard King would do that portion of it, sorry. Mm-hmm.
And did you know that ammonia was used years ago, and now we finally went full circle and we're back to it now?
Mm-hmm. I have found that out.
Any other questions? All right, entertain a motion on items. Councilor Mogul.
I'll make a motion to hire Ballard King and Associates to perform a feasibility planning and operations study of the athletic facilities improvements to the community center, to hire the architectural consultant of 292 Design Group to complete the feasibility and architectural studies for said improvements, to hire Strengthstad Inc. to determine funding options for the city portion of the project's financing, to direct staff to enter into contracts for the above, and to direct staff to issue RFPs for programming analysis of cultural and social facility needs.
Do we have a second?
I'm going to second that one.
Second by Councilor Whiting. Discussion. Councilor Lehman.
Well, I think this is very poor timing. I think there's a good possibility that this effort is going to have negative impacts on the school referendum for core educational needs, and I just think it's poor timing. And I
Okay.
definitely don't support it if it's not, it needs to go before the voters on a referendum.
Councilor Luce.
I'm not in favor of it either for the fact that the timeline is too short. They're not going to be able to do a good job. It's going to be garbage in, garbage out. We're not going to get what we need. And I agree with Councilor Lehman that timing with a school bond referendum approaching is very poor.
Do you feel the timing is okay?
I have been at the facility task force meetings, and the recommendation from both.
Well, not the school timing. I wouldn't dare ask you that piece.
Okay, good, 'cause
Yeah. No, the timing of
I
the
was gonna
study
be
coming
very-
back to us. Sorry.
Well, there hasn't been a exact timeline set. I mean, the goal was the 90 days, but as was directed at the last council meeting, if it takes longer, it could come back longer. We're supposed to do it correctly. That's been our direction, so we would keep you informed.
I still think we're pushing it.
Okay, Councilor Whiting.
You know, I don't see this as a timing on the study issue. They're not going to issue us anything that's subpar. And as far as the timing of a school referendum, I don't see how this has any effect. It's a study on our needs and facility needs that definitely could affect in a positive way the referendum. So I disagree with both your comments. So.
All right. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to hear how it's a positive influence on a school referendum.
Well, if we decide to move ahead with facilities, that would take that portion of it away from the referendum, so that they wouldn't have to be funding some of this. I don't know which way that this is going to go for the referendum or what the final decision is, but they're going to have needs as far as facilities, and this could affect them in a way that's positive to their needs.
Councilor Luce.
We've just had a raise in taxes for a number of people. Anything we do on this thing is going to cost people more in taxes. School referendum's going to cost them more. Where does it stop?
Yep, there's only so much out there, which means they're gonna have less money to spend at businesses.
Well, this isn't the decision we're making tonight. This is a
Right,
study.
this is a study.
Well, if you're spending this kind of money to do a study, it's been pretty clear in the past that there's a push by a certain majority on this council to do this one way or the other. So if the public gets that perception, they might think, "Well, I can't support a school because I can't afford it if this is going to get rammed one way or the other."
I disagree with that comment, but I'll call the question.
All right, no further discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Passes 3-2 with Councilors Lehman and Luce in dissent. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you.
All right. Do we need to go over there, or can we just do this from here, you think?
His plan was to sit down and go through with us page by page, so that would be probably more conducive for that.
Okay.
I'll say here, that's your choice.
We're going to migrate over there real quick. All right, we're moving to the workshop session, so we're going to head over to the tables.
Sorry.
I can make him some coffee. You want me to go do that?
No. Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, thank you.
I could watch it page by page, but
Not
we can just do it.
necessary.
Okay. We'll talk global and keep it short and sweet.
What's this presentation from? You know where that one came
That
from?
one? They just put that together for us for, what was it that they showed?
That's the one for
us?
scale.
Yeah.
That goes in the
that's what-
county.
If we made a pot of coffee, would people see that as a good thing?
I don't think anyone would be offended by a pot of coffee.
All right. Thank you.
All right, moving on to 11A, citywide telephone survey.
This is Peter Letterman of Morris Leatherman Agency. They are well-known in the Twin Cities for doing attitude surveys. There are a lot of other cities that have used them over the years. We've talked with you back, in September about this. The approval was to, let's go ahead and do it. We have a draft. Peter, I think the plan is you'd like to go through and page by page figure out where.
Whatever the council preference, at this time of night, if we want to keep it more to global level instead of saying question 1, question 5, concerns, probably go sequentially though in order so we're not skipping back and forth. So first off, I would ask, are there any just questions on process or anything outside of the simple survey draft that you might have?
Could you give just a quick overview as to how the process works, like when it would start, when it would end, that kind of stuff for your...
Sure, I mean, the timing will be based on when we have final approval of the survey. But once we have approval of the survey, timing on this with the survey of this length in the community typically takes 2 to 3 weeks of field time. With the survey this long, probably 30 to 40% are going to be by appointment, where it's not convenient now, but can we call you back at a different time, which brings down the refusal rate. So 2 to 3 weeks for field work, 1 to 2 weeks coding and data entry. You have the results typically within a 5 to 6 week period, and at that point we come back and then present the results, discuss comparisons, those sorts of things, give that added level of detail to the to the data that we have. But the survey is conducted on with the telephone, and we do include landline and cell phones in order to have the best representative sample.
And a couple questions that had come up in the past were how many people would actually do a survey of this, stay engaged for a survey of this length, and how many would drop out halfway through, and what's the representative sample that we'd get of the community, since there's a lot of people who don't have landlines now and things like that.
Well, I mean, we'll pick up the cell phone only households by calling cell phones and screening them. I mean, obviously we'll have to, we might find somebody who lives in Burnsville or what have you and screen them out to live in Shakopee. The typical refusal rate on a city, if the city puts out on their website, in their newsletter, in the local newspaper that the city is conducting a survey, and people understand that we're not trying to sell them anything, our name comes up on the caller ID, the refusal rate is typically under 10%, and with cities and school districts typically under 5%, where they won't take the time to do it. It's their chance to play council member for an evening in 20 to 25 minutes that is pretty painless, as opposed to participating in town hall meetings and those sorts of things. So refusal rates increase as you go up the scale of government. To talk about Congress, 40% will refuse. They really don't want to talk about it. But when you get down to this level of government with these specific issues that people care about, it really is just making it convenient for them to talk.
Who else had questions on process, concerns, that kind of thing? Councilor Lehman?
Are these citizens excluded from this?
If you are included in the random sample, we encourage you as a resident of the city to take it. We have had, actually it just happened, we called the superintendent in the district we're working with in Wisconsin, and he said, why didn't you exclude my number? He said, I refuse to take the survey. And he said, well, then you just increased the refusal rate for the survey, but it is your choice. You are a resident, and we leave it to council members in order to
I
make
wouldn't
that.
take it if they called, but I have, a grown son or my wife or somebody else, I could do it.
Yeah. We do use the birthday method up front. We ask for the person in the household whose birthday is closest to the date we're calling, because if we didn't do that, it would be 70% female. In Minnesota, it's known as the Honeywell You're Up factor. Men do not answer the phone at the same rate as women do in this state.
Thanks, Gal.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Councilor Whiting?
Mr. Mayor, what is the number of people you're trying to reach?
We'll have 400 completed interviews.
400.
400, which is plus or minus 5%.
Okay, there it is. Okay, thank you.
Did anybody have any specific concerns? I looked through the questions and I thought they were all very good. Is there anything that's on here that people would like to exclude or would not like to deal with, or anything that's not on here that they would like to be asked?
I have a couple. Number 7, I guess it is. In 2013, the actual percentage of your property taxes going to the city of Shakopee was what percent? Is there a way that we can make this easier for the average person? On your line, you've got your line item on your taxes.
That'll be filled in by.
Yeah, it's not a question. That blank needs to be filled in by the city. So what we do is we ask for their perception of taxes, and then we tell them what it is.
Okay.
We don't do the reverse, because then that makes them atypical with
Okay, and that
information.
leads me into 8 and 9. In 8, if we could just change it to, would you favor or oppose an increase in your city property tax if it were needed to maintain city core services, and then use 9 as non-core additional services? Because now you're breaking it out and really getting a flavor of, are you willing to pay more for the street out in front of your house, or do you want to pay less for that? And then you're asking, in number 9, are you willing to pay more for things we don't currently have that are maybe not core services?
If you look through the whole thing, once you
I
get
did.
further in,
Yep.
so like pages in the middle of it, there's a
Yep.
lot of those kinds of questions.
We might be able, the core, non-core, we would have to go into definition with the respondent and say, this is what we're talking about, core, non-core. Maybe one suggestion specifically to get to that is, if they tell me that they oppose a property tax increase to maintain in question 8, ask them what services would they be willing to see cut.
Right.
And then if they support a property tax increase to improve or enhance current services, ask what for.
Right.
And have them come back and tell us what they either see as a potential cut,
Right.
or as a potential enhancement, as an open-ended. That might be one way to tap in instead of getting
Right.
into the core, non-core.
Okay. All right.
Councilor Whiting?
Under the next section that so it'd be 11, 12, 13, 14. I was wondering if we could add, and I was trying to see if it was picked up somewhere else, economic development initiatives by the city, in that whether or not they would, they feel they're good, fair, poor.
The economic development portion of the city,
Maybe program?
Programs or initiatives, yeah,
include that in the section, city services?
just to kind of get a flavor of.
People that rate that would be those that use it.
No other understanding of it, I guess I'm looking for.
All right.
It's 99% of people give an opinion on the police. and only 8 to 10% will have an experience with them. On surveys in public, perception is.
They all like
That's
them
all we're
until
going
they're in
for.
your tail.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I
the
mean,
intent.
you know, in some cases, we could ask, and we have you used this city service? And if you have, how would you rate it? So then you're just looking at users only, but you shrink your universe. And a lot of times on issues with city services, perception dominates, whether they have an experience or not. They heard a neighbor had a positive experience or a negative experience, those sorts of aspects into it.
So did that answer your question?
I'd like to see that added.
Yeah, you'd like the economic development into that list?
It has been a big portion of what we've been working on, obviously, in the city.
So, are you looking for then city incentives for rehabilitation or for job creation, or I mean, how?
Well, we could take
it's
it
kinda
deeper, but
broad.
I'm trying to keep it,
I think he's asking to find out what the public's perception is on our business subsidy policy that we.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't know if I want to take it any farther, because I don't think they're, the general public is informed enough to go farther. Just to see what their perception of what we've done so far.
So they're either gonna have a favorable opinion of it, a non-favorable opinion on it, or they're gonna say,
I have no idea.
I don't know enough about it to have an opinion.
Are you in favor of the city's business subsidy program? Leave it at that.
Well, or, and you're the wordsmith on the questions. It's, in my head, it would be more of a, are you in favor of the city working or partnering with businesses for adding jobs in the town, or whatever that may be, or not in favor of it, or however you.
If you're talking kind of incentivize, some cities have asked the question, basically, do you support or oppose the use of financial incentives to bring business into the city? It kind of just get down to the nub of it.
Okay.
And if that's what you're interested in, I would add it later on into the section where we are talking about development in the community, you know, probably in the area around questions in the 70s.
Okay.
But if you're interested, I definitely could add that.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else you can?
Just the only comment I had on 78 and 79, I guess 77 too, it talks, the question says, you know, excluding gasoline, you know, and I'm just wondering if people get mixed up in that one a little bit, trying to understand, see if I'm taking out the gasoline portion and asking whether or not, you know, I do purchases here. I guess, I didn't have a problem with it, I just kind of got lost in the question.
We don't wanna know to stop at a holiday most of the time.
Right, yeah, that's kind of what, and that came out of a survey we did. I've been doing this 20 years. It was probably 16, 17 years ago, and it was the city of Waconia. And we asked, you know, what do you consider to be your principal retail shopping area? And they had a significant portion, there's 95, saying Holiday and Super America.
Right.
And
Well, that's all I got.
yeah, it, you know, you're talking 20, 25%. Okay, that doesn't tell them enough. So that actually comes directly from that.
Okay, well, I knew there had to be some history.
To pull it out and make them think beyond that. Sometimes people will say excluding gasoline and groceries because they want to talk about the real retail shopping area.
Yeah, we don't want to exclude groceries.
But yeah.
One thing that I remembered as I was looking through this is there a place where we could ask if people work from home?
Ask how many miles do you drive to work?
No, that gets to the same
Yeah,
question.
zero,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah.
Plus, of course, you drive around the block a couple times a day.
Actually,
Unless
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, which I do just to get out of my house, so.
You would've got gas.
With other people's cars, though.
Right.
I'm excited for the answers to come back. And see you guys,
Well, I would say the grocery store one is probably gonna be hit pretty high.
I know.
Mm-hmm.
For need, as seen.
On question 20, I think you might want to ask, how would you rate the current garbage and recycling pickup? We're trying to get a read on
Okay.
The new
Yep.
or the, what we've had since June 1st?
I was, okay, it's been since June 1st?
Yes.
Do you want to ask another question, compare it to the old service, or is that?
Are we
go
going
too
back?
far?
Yeah.
Oh, no, yeah, that's true.
But that's a good point. We do tell them, but, and maybe I'm gonna put in there, maybe since June 1st.
Since the rollout, so.
Yeah.
We had
Since
quite a
1 month
few
after the
problems
rollout.
after
Put it
the first
Yeah.
month. So,
There's always friendly experiment, yeah.
okay.
Anything else, any topics you think we're missing, or is-
How often do you suggest that we do something like this?
I mean, I think
He's the salesman.
yeah, a
6
typical
months.
consultant would say,
Yeah.
every other month. No, absolutely not. The typical answer for a client is, it really depends where you are in a growth cycle, is what we found. There are a few, well, Minnetonka does it every year. Minnetonka has some staff salaries tied to the results of the survey. Higher growth areas, though, tend to do it every 2 to 3 years. As you get closer in to the core cities, a Crystal, a New Hope, they'll do it every 5 to 7 years. So it really has less to do. What a lot of cities want to establish is the baseline. And then what's interesting, with this survey, we're not going to have a baseline to compare to say you've gone up or down. What we will have is be able to say how you compare to communities in the metro area, how you compare to the communities in your ring, those sorts of things. I would say, though, with your growth cycle where you're at, typically the range would be 2 to 5 years. Really, it depends on how often you need the data. It often depends also on issues facing the community. Things pop up that people need to go in and do surveys on. So it's not, I would not recommend every year.
Right.
I wouldn't, somewhere between 2 to 4 years, I think, with the city with your cycle would be reasonable.
Okay.
Do we have any historical data here? Have we done anything like this, or?
Well, that was referendum, 99.
It's all referendum.
All
It's the
referendum
first
based.
True attitude.
Question on
survey that we've done.
107. Now, we recently upgraded our website, so I think we've got an opportunity here in the wording of this question. If we ask them to evaluate the content of the city's upgraded website, they might say, I haven't seen it. I haven't looked at it in 6 months. Maybe I should check it out.
When did the upgrade roll out?
January 21st.
So this year. So maybe the question actually is, in order to get to what you're saying, is in question 106, have you accessed the city's website this year? And then those that go into the evaluation of the content and the navigation, we know that they will have visited the updated website.
Right.
That's a really good catch then, because if they accessed it 3 years ago, if they said that navigation is terrible, it's not a
Right.
fair
And not only
comparison.
that, but if they haven't accessed it, and now they're aware that it's been upgraded, they might want to go check it out.
Yeah. Yep.
So we might be able to get a benefit
Yep.
from that. Here I am, talking web savvy with a rock and a chisel.
There you go.
Amazing. Things can happen.
All right, any other questions? You've been very quiet.
I'm just listening to
All right.
good questions.
All right. Is there anything else you need from us?
I don't think so. I'll make the revisions and then work with staff to finalize the survey, if you're
What about,
comfortable with that.
I'm sorry, I have one more.
All right.
You always hear it, but you get different opinions from lifelong Shakopee residents than you do
Number,
from
yeah.
newer residents. I'm just, I don't know if it's in here or not, I didn't see it, but I wondered if we should.
It's at the end.
It's the
How
very
long have you lived
first
here?
So it's actually the first question.
first.
Oh,
Yep.
there we go. Okay,
And,
that should
and
cover that.
when we come back, and talk about the data and then also write up the data, we cut the data, I mean, those demographics are in there not only to check, to validate the sample against updated census information, but then it is to give that data another depth by coming in and saying, your settlers are here, your newbies are here, households with children are here, seniors feel this way, homeowners this way, renters that way, and we can cut the data because there are different attitudes. And what's interesting, in the last 3 to 5 years across the metro area, there really seems to be quite a synergy between the opinions of settlers of a community, those that have been there over 20 years, and those that have been here less than 5 years. And then, so I've been here a long time, I'm against change, I just got here and I don't want anything to change. And the change agents tend to be in that 5 to 20 year category. So it's really interesting what's happened over the past 5 years, yeah.
How will we get the data?
You get the data, basically you'll get this typed out with all the percentages and everything, and then we do a PowerPoint visually, because it's interesting to see 12%, 13%, but most people are visual. So we go through the pie charts in the presentation. Then at the end, you get a stack of crosstabs with all those demographic breakdowns. So you can look at it question by question if you want to, and what sort of thing, and then write a report on it.
All right.
We'll get a copy of that PowerPoint, city?
Yeah, yep.
Time limit?
I think roughly now, I mean, if it seems like we're pretty close, so I think we could, you know, maybe even start it next week. We could get this done before the holidays. It's a great time to call people because people are sitting there wrapping their presents and they'll sit and take a survey, and it's just a fabulous. Our phone bank is so productive these 3 weeks. I wish they'd last forever. So I mean, if we could work through and get it started, we could have results for you by the middle to end of January.
And we've already approved this, right? We don't have any other further actions to take?
No, you've
As council,
approved
yeah.
this is
All right.
the detail, yes.
We have consensus tonight.
Yeah. I think we're good. Is there anything that we're missing asking?
I don't think so. I think in meeting with Mark and the staff initially, from the initial draft to the revised draft, I think it was really tailored to the city.
So you could have just phoned this one in and not had to stay here
Yeah,
until
thanks
10
for
o'clock?
staying, Mr.
Thanks.
Leatherman. I appreciate it.
Part of it is I had a little procedure 2 weeks ago, so I had to cancel on you, so it's not a problem. I understand. I've been doing this for 20 years. I know how school boards and city councils operate, especially this time of year with budgets, so.
Budgets, exactly. All right, well, thank you very much.
You're more than welcome. Have a great evening.
Thanks, you too.
Look forward to the results.
Yeah.
Are we staying here?
Yeah, we might as well, yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
Are we ready?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Mayor, members of council, I'm here tonight to ask for your input on how we should proceed with the larger shelter that we're planning for Quarry Lake Park. And I'm bringing this forward in your packet tonight, and I can put these up on the screen too. But in your packet tonight, you had concept plans. In your packet tonight, you had the concept plans that we have hired WSB and Associates to plan this park for us. So Ms. Candace Amberg is here tonight if you have any specific questions about this. But what we're looking at is in our concept plan. So I'm going to go back actually to 2004. This was our concept plan that the city had put together for Quarry Lake Park. This was before we had public access. So this park plan had been put on hold since about 2006 without the public access, and a lot of things have changed since then. But ultimately, we've kind of worked still with this as our core concept plan. But one of the things we had back in 2004, 2005, 2006 that's maintained with it is a large building. At this time, it was a partnership and a collaboration with the Outdoor Heritage Education Center that was in Chocopee. That group is no longer in Chocopee. They're in western Wisconsin, and they're actually run by one person who does it on the side. It's not a large organization anymore. So the conversation with them has not happened as we move forward with this park now. However, back earlier this year, we had brought a concept plan to the city council to approve, to know what we were kind of still working towards, which is this plan. And we have kept on that a larger shelter. So we had in here, up here, 2 smaller open-air shelters, and then here's the larger shelter that was a shelter that we've kind of always kept on the back burner as this education center, this outdoor education center where groups could come. This is a unique park in the industrial area that has a lot of interesting natural features as well as the history of the quarry and the industrial around it. So as we move forward tonight, then we have come up with these 3 concept plans that were looked at by, this is the overall park plan. Basically, we're looking at this area right here. Concept 1, all 3 concept plans still had this larger shelter. That's what we had directed WSB to keep within our planning and move forward on at the concept phase of it. We've had 2 community meetings. We've also taken this to the park board for comment, and the idea of that larger shelter has still remained in the feedback we've gotten. We will be putting together a final concept plan that will come to the park board on Monday, come back to you then the second meeting in December for approval to develop the plans and specifications for the park. However, before we do that, I need your feedback on this large shelter. Our budget for this park right now in our park reserve fund is $1.7 million. It's a 111 acre park, so it's substantially larger than, for instance, Southbridge Community Park that we just did for about $1 million. It's got close to 2 miles of paved trails alone, plus another almost 2 miles of unpaved trails. So the cost of the building could be part of the initial project, or it could be separate. If we choose to make it just a basic rental shelter, we may be able to include it in the overall cost of the park at that budgeted amount. Or if you choose that you want to keep it or plan it for more that educational learning center, then it will be outside of our budget, and you as council will need to provide me input as to how we go about finding additional funding, because the park reserve won't have any additional funding in it for this shelter.
Question, JD.
Mm-hmm.
The building on top.
Yep.
Large rental, that would be there for rental uses?
Yes.
And the bottom one is multi-purpose. Which building are you talking about?
We're talking about this large one.
Okay.
This one we're planning to just be an open-air shelter similar to what we have at Lions Park, Memorial Park. That one would be included.
And which one houses like restrooms?
This larger shelter would.
Okay, well, we're gonna need restrooms in this park regardless.
Correct.
Whether we have this building or not.
Mm-hmm.
So we should probably figure that into it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, could we use the concept that we've got for the other parks on the top rental one?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe just make it bigger than what is it, Holmes or Hiawatha?
Mm-hmm.
That concept where half of it is enclosed with the bathrooms and stuff in a small meeting area,
Mm-hmm.
and then the other side is open. And so we're covered for that, and then we could use the other building as a bid alternate.
Mm-hmm.
And based on where everything goes, you could not do it at that time and see how the rental goes on that. And if it's always packed, you can build a second one and rent it out.
That's a potential possibility, yes. Direction that we need, that I'm looking for from you tonight, though, is for that large shelter, even if it is built at a later date, is how do we want it design it? What do we want to design it for? Do we want to design it to potentially be that really large outdoor education type center, or, you know, where people could rent it for large weddings and receptions and stuff? Or do we just want to scale it back and have, you know, maybe 2 of the same smaller shelters that we could potentially fit in the current budget?
Jay? What I like about the larger shelter, and I'm not so sure it's gonna be an outdoor heritage or outdoor natural area, but what I like is on concept 2, and the fact that, you know, the Water Ski Club uses this area and possibly have it for rental use, but also have a concession type place where somebody could rent it for a wedding and prepare. Maybe it's just got tables in there and doesn't have the stoves and all of that.
Have catering to it.
Has some catering aspect to it, and then you got the beautiful setting by the lake. You got the amphitheater type seating for weddings, watching the ski club, so many things. But then you also have the building as a utility to enhance that activity.
To give you a little bit of visual about what might be coming forward to you based on what the park board says, a lot of the concepts, the final concept, are off of this plan. Candace has brought us some ideas today that would flip-flop these shelters. It was a comment that the large shelter should go here and overlook the lake, along with the little gazebo and the seating area. Excuse me, I'm sorry. This is not a good. I have a cough drop in too in my water, so we'll get through it. And then the large parking lot over here. So this is kind of the idea that we might bring forward to you. No, not yet. Let's look at that.
Does that have the amphitheater type seating down there? I can't
It does.
tell what that is. Is that sand or is it?
Yes, it does. Yep. These are just different pavers that you could, but it would be an amphitheater type seating, yeah. If
So-
we,
So what
okay.
you need from us tonight is just, are we in favor of including for now the multi-purpose type building, right?
What I'm looking for tonight is to let me, we need to know what if we're gonna be designing a larger shelter. Not whether or not we're building it right now, because we need to get cost estimates on that. But as part of the contract with WSB, we do have an architect as that contract that would do a building plan for us. That would, we would, in the plan then, determine where that building would go, whether it's now or at a future date, how big that footprint would be, and we would design the park with the idea that that would eventually be built. So we're looking, because the larger shelter, the footprint is needed for the design, but then we'll have to work on, how we do potentially have options to partner with local businesses that would maybe help fund this larger building. There may be grants available if it is an education center. If that's the desire you want to go, then that's how we'll design for it.
Footprint of that big building.
It's
Approximately, we figured 100 by 52.
It's a pretty good sized building. And the other one? See, that says large
That's
rental, and
about-
the other one says multi-purpose, so.
I think the other one was about 30 by 60.
Yep, that's what our current shelters are.
I would design it in.
Okay.
And I think Brad's right on, it has to have a multi-purpose usable, or you're really limiting your future options.
Mhm.
Then, in the, if we ever build it and bid it out, I'd make it a bid alternate, along with maybe some other things, to see where you fall in your pricing, and then you can pick and choose.
Then look for partners.
Right.
Well, right, but it's bid that way so that if you add it or not, or remove it, you're not penalized with the rest of the bid.
Yep.
Mike?
The seating area, is the water ski club gonna put some money towards this? Because they're the only ones gonna benefit from that. It's looking at the water.
No, this would not be the seating area for the Water Ski Association. They don't use this corner of the lake for their shows.
And there's fishing piers up there.
There is fishing. It's be more of a general use,
There
community.
could be weddings there.
So the
benefit.
amphitheater seating is actually looking inward to the park?
No, it is looking at the lake, but it would be for the general use of the public, not to accommodate the water ski shows.
This is where we're gonna hide and watch Valley Fair's fireworks.
Yes, you could.
Shut
Yeah.
down and make it our own.
Set cat's out now.
All right, so
What-
it sounds like everybody is in favor of multi-purpose building being designed into it?
Yes.
Any issues with that?
Yeah, I'm good with that, but I do also like the openness of this layout than I do a few of the others with the trees. This way gives kids a little chance to run.
This was the one that the Park and Rec Board picked
Frisbee
too.
or
Yeah.
football,
It was favored by the Park and Rec Board as well.
Yeah.
Yep. Just one item that kind of I wanted to bring up to see at what extent should we design it is this is the McCall Pond Environmental Learning Center in Savage. They built this in 2008, I believe. It is a LEED certified building. It is an environmental center. You come in from this side. They have a classroom that they built on. I think they have another small classroom, and then this is a large multi-purpose room that people rent out. I think it has an area for people to cater in food, and they can rent it out for weddings and large gatherings, and it overlooks their big pond and wetland area that they have here. Just to get an idea as to why I'm looking for direction on how to design this, is this building in 2008 was $2.4 million. If we're gonna go with this this is a larger building than what we have on the plan, so we would go smaller. But if we're looking at this type of a building that's LEED certified, you know, that is a very larger piece of the budget, it's over the budget that we have for the rest of the park. If we just want to plan for a larger, as you're saying, multi-use shelter, that we could potentially have groups there and stuff and keep it mainly an open concept with the catering ability, that is a much different approach than a learning center. So is that what we're looking towards?
I like your second approach, yeah.
Okay, so the multi-purpose.
Unless we got some grant money that's gonna help build this thing.
Okay. So we're looking at basically the rectangle type
But I think that
multi-purpose room.
Savage got it a lot of it paid by grants and donations. A huge chunk of this was funded through a lot of grants. So I wouldn't shy away from doing it the way we want it. And if that would be what we want to see, we can always pull it back in the future if need be.
But as far as space, that's what we want a lot.
See, we were part of the funding on that, I know, and,
Yeah. I think not part, but a major part of the funding, yeah.
our company was.
Uh-huh.
But the thing is,
Yeah,
you
this
need
is
to
what
have somebody
their
run it,
costs
you
were.
need to have somebody design it, and what's it gonna be used for, so there's a lot more questions to be answered before we go down that road.
Well, and I don't want, the park has got a lot of good benefits to it, and if you oversize any one portion of it, it kind of takes away from the other portions of it. And so I kind of like to balance it. You know, I like the water aspects, I like to be able to play the catch-up game with the kids in the middle or whatever, or, have your get-together at the smaller shelter where you've got the bathrooms and the outdoor for barbecuing or whatever. I like the whole park diversified, and if you put too big of a structure, you're kind of pushing out the other aspects of it.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, I think that this is a good size for it, but I think we're mostly just talking use and not size, right?
Yeah, I mean, if it was an environmental learning center like Savage has, they do hold classes there and environmental type education programs there, but they also do rent it out to the public. So we could, even with a 50 by 100 building, we could still, I don't know if that would, I would have to talk to the school district to see if that would accommodate them bringing a class out there to do some programs and stuff, if that's large enough. And then get back to you on that, if we want to do it to let groups come out here and learn about the site and do some education type things, and we can put things on the wall. But I see it also being used for renting out for larger events and that sort of thing. And that's where I think some of the corporations around the park may be willing to look at this facility and contribute to it if it benefits their employees, potentially. I think if it has the environmental education component, then there could be potential for more grants of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
If we're going down that road with the businesses in the area and even businesses out of the area, do we have the ability to close down the park and make it just one use for them for a day?
Yes, we do. And this park is the one park we have, well, Memorial also, we have gates on the entrance that we can actually close them.
Private,
So what I'm hearing is a larger building like this, like we're planning for, that could accommodate maybe education classes, but large groups, gatherings.
Multiple purpose.
Multiple purpose, okay.
with catering capacity and plumbing.
Okay. And all of that, when we do the final design and specifications before we actually go out to bid, you'll get an estimated cost for all the park property and amenities as well as these buildings as well. So we'll determine before we even go to bid if we want to include it or not, or if it's something that we put off. All right. Do you have enough information, Candace? Okay. That's what I needed. Thank you.
Thank you. The dog park is beautiful, by the way.
What?
The dog park is beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Turned out very good.
Now we're waiting on our cat park.
It can be in the all breed area.
New environmental cat area.
There was a rabbit in there the other day that my beagle decided to go after,
Bring
and
my mechanical kitty out there.
there you go. All right, so that's 11B. Now we're gonna move on to closed session, so we're gonna need to get everybody out of here.
Actually, we could probably set up for sound in conference room.
Okay, just do it here.
I don't know